Emery Aiken has always lived in a mysterious and eerie village. Growing up with folktales about a fictitious creature being whispered around the campfire, never once believing a word said, thinking it was all just a hoax while the other girls prepared for the ritual that takes place every 20 years. What is this peculiar ritual, you ask? This tradition, known as the ritual to the beast, happens every 20 years under a blood moon. Girls between the ages of 16 to 19 are chained in the forest, chained so they wouldn't be able to run. Run from what? The beast. One girl is sacrificed, and what happens after? You're cold, he said, concerned, while walking towards me while shrugging his jacket off. Whoa there, buddy, hold your horses, I said, putting my hand out to stop his movement. I promise I'm not going to hurt you, he said as a look of hurt flashed across his face. Haven't you heard? A promise is a fool's comfort, I said. Haha, he said sarcastically and continued walking towards me. Wait, what are you doing? I asked as he came up to me and took off his jacket. Dude, seriously, I'm getting claustrophobic here, I said, when he leaned closer to me and his arms went around me. When he told me to lift my arms backward, I got a little terrified, so I did the one thing that normal people do, well, what I would and did do anyways. I kneed him in the groin and stepped away as he fell to my feet on his knee. The week was finally here, the week of the blood moon. No matter how hard I tried to get away from it, it kept showing up. I had no idea why everyone was so intrigued by this horrendous and barbaric ritual. Did something called the ritual to the beast sound like something to celebrate? The beast, as they refer to, is an unknown creature, but doesn't that just maximize the fear factor? I listened to these torturous stories since I was a child, considering I would be of age when the next ritual came around. I was 19, just the age to be a part of the ritual. There is no actual proof of what happens to the girl who goes missing, but that's completely baffling to me. How could one girl just fall off the face of the earth? While some feared for their lives, others went shopping for the night of the ritual. The elders of the town who controlled the ritual made this inhumane tradition into a glamorized festival. Who even knew what this beast was or what he wanted? These girls might as well be preparing for their own death. Let me enlighten you on this alleged tradition that may be harmless or harmful. Centuries ago, there was this beast that was described as Satan himself that owned this land of the village, but as time grew by, humans began developing the area. Humans took over the land and it was now the small little town of Fairbairn. The beast was angry, but they quickly found a solution. I didn't know how, but they did. The treaty that was formed stated that the village protects the beast's secret and presents all women of ages 16 to 19 to him on the first blood moon to occur every 20 years, and the humans may receive all land, develop. The treaty was quickly accepted by everyone as the beast got what it wanted and the humans got the clarification that only one of all the girls would be taken, or so we were all told. It doesn't seem like a fair trade to me, but then again, I wasn't around centuries ago. Therefore, since then every 20 years, one girl is taken by the beast. The girls were supposed to be dressed in all white as they are chained into forest so they wouldn't be able to run. Then the beast shows up and chooses who he wants and disappears with her. No trace can be found. The other girls, however, are all found the next day in the forest, right where they were left, not remembering anything of the night before. Some families fear for their daughter's life while most rejoice in the celebration. But no one has a choice as the treaty is law and everyone forces the girls to the forest even if they are kicking and screaming. There were hunters who tried hunting the beast to figure out what it was but came up with nothing, while others who were closer to figuring it out disappeared in the forest completely, just as the girl that is taken. Though, the forest went on for miles and miles into rocky mountain tops and dangerous trenches, so the hunters could never find their way through, as it would take days, or even weeks to get through the forest until they could find anything else. Of course I know that I will not be chosen as I hate this ritual with all of my heart and soul, so there is no way this beast is going to take me. But still I hate being a part of this tradition. Plus I may get hypothermia from sitting out all night in the middle of the forest, no blanket, no heater, just plain old me in that stupid white dress. My family persistently pushed me to this ritual. My father was a bit wary, but my mom convinced him that it would be the best thing. even my little sister was excited for it. But fortunately for her, she was only 15. Unlike the other girls in this town, I wanted to explore the world, move out of this creepy town and go to college. Graduate with a medical degree and help those that are not as fortunate to get the medical help that some take for granted. Most importantly, I wanted to live, not die in some stupid ritual. My sister Avery was also sick. She had muscular dystrophy. It basically means that over time, her muscles are being broken down and someday, sooner rather than later, she will become so weak that she wouldn't be able to walk. One of the reasons I didn't want to leave her was because I wanted to be here and take care of her. I wanted to go to medical school and fight to find a cure for her or a way for her to be able to walk when her legs give out. I had a life to live. I even had a boyfriend who was also against this insane ritual and creature. Jake and I always had that in common, a main reason why I liked him so much, but he was funny and charming. It was impossible to hate him. He and I both didn't want me to be a part of the ritual, but my mom and the entire village is making everyone one of us, eligible, attend. Not as if we have a choice. My friends couldn't be more excited for this. The more I tried to show them how cruel the tradition was, the more they found positive things to say about it. But as of now they have become competitors to each other, thinking this is some competition for the beast. Strange didn't even begin to describe it. Today was Monday and the blood moon was set to take place on Saturday night. My mom and sister dragged me out of the house to go dress shopping as the ritual calls for the girls to wear a white dress, something to do with purity and innocence and all that nonsense. The streets were busy with girls in the most glamorous stores looking for their dress and individuals on the streets decorating for the ritual. They celebrated and decorated as if it was Caesar returning from defeating Pompey. Streamers, lights, and the works. Emery, what store do you want to start in first? My mother asked as she led the way. Anywhere not crowded. You know I already don't like this thing, I said with a frown to exaggerate my point. Emery, please don't fight with me on this again. We already talked about this, she said in a stern voice. But Mom, it doesn't make sense to spend a truckload of money for just one night that can either end in my death or me remaining here and have nothing else to do with the dress, I replied. If you don't want to shop then don't, but your sister and I are going to get a dress for you, whether you like it or not, she said as she and my sister Avery took off to one of the most expensive stores in towns, which just happened to be the one filled with the most people. My mom has been talking about this day since I was born. I seriously couldn't catch a break. 20 years ago my mom was 23, so she was not eligible to partake. Therefore now that I have a chance, she is jumping for joy. But she has never and will never be in the position I am in. When my mom and sister took off I walked around a bit, trying to avoid everyone as much as possible. I went to the small pizza restaurant, which was thankfully away from the crowd, when I saw a little antique store in a secluded alleyway. I noticed it before but never spared my time. But right now it seemed like the only place without dozens of people and a bus full of squealing girls, so I walked in. It was quite amazing actually. Everything was vintage, from a grandfather clock to a grand piano to just about any old thing you can find. There was even a classic record player. I loved everything to do with turntables and I actually started my own vinyl collection. Being the curious one, I looked around and saw no one, so I found a vinyl from a classic band from the 80s. I slipped the disc on the track and placed the needle to start playing. To say it played beautifully and melodiously was an understatement. Can I help you, dear? Someone asked from behind me and I squealed in fright. Oh. No, sorry, I just couldn't help myself. It is a beautiful turntable, I said as smiled at the elderly woman. It is, and you played my favorite record, dear, she said, beaming brightly at me. I love this band, I said, returning her smile. Shouldn't you be shopping for your dress? She asked. No, I don't do the whole ritual thing. My mom and sister are actual out looking for a dress for me, I replied. Why? Scared of the beast? She asked, looking amused. No, It's just that this whole thing seems like a made-up folktale that might just be a cover-up for something a little more sinister. I said. Now I agree with you there, honey, she said. But don't think that the beast isn't real. I know that there may not be proof, but then again, is there proof of it not existing? She asked. Well, there isn't, but... I trailed off because she was right. But nothing, dear. I'm with you on this, but considering you have to go, why don't I show you a few pieces? She suggested. No, I'll pass, I said, and she only laughed as she pulled me to the clothes section. We are going to find you a dress. You may not like this event, but you, my dear, are going out in style, she said, smiling at me. All right, if you insist. Okay, you look through that section, she said, pointing to all the white dresses. I will be right back. And she walked to the back room. All the dresses here were actually quite beautiful, but not particularly my taste. After what seemed like forever, the store owner came back. Find anything yet, dear? She came, box in hand. No, not yet, I said, looking through the racks of white dresses she had. I was hoping so, she said as she set the box down on a table. This dress belonged to me when I was around your age. She smiled at the memory, except I had this for when I was going to get married to man before I met my late husband. I really can't. I shook my head. Can't or wouldn't? Just take a look, a dear. She said as opened up the box and took out the dress. It was breathtaking. It was like a dress made with magic, as weird as that sounds. It was absolutely beautiful. It's amazing, I said as my eyes practically bugged out of my eyes. But I seriously can't. This must cost a fortune. I wouldn't be able to afford it, I said, stepping away. Who said anything about paying? She said, amused. I don't understand. I'm giving it to you, dear. For free, no charge. She said, packing it back in the box. I can't accept this. I pushed the box back to her. Honey, I have no use for this again. It will fit you perfectly and you'll pull it off. She smiled even brighter. Okay, I will take it. But at least let me know your name, I said curiously. It's Jane Fraser. I'm Emery Aiken. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Fraser, I said, putting my hand out for her to shake. The pleasure is mine, dear child. And you're making me sound old. Call me Jane. She laughed. Well, Jane, I best be going now before my mother thinks that the beast took me early. I laughed, but her expression just fell. Emery, just be careful, okay? You never know what's lurking out there. I will. I promise. I smiled even though her words made me curious. Okay, now go, child, before your family gets worried, she said, smiling again. And don't forget to come back. I would, soon. Hopefully I will be here more often when the whole ritual fiasco is over, I said as I walked out. Bye, Jane. Bye, dear, she called back. By the time I was done, I had enough time to get my pizza and finish it until my mom called and said to meet her in the shoe store. She took that long in the clothing store. I was terrified of how long she would take in the shoe store. The dress she found was nice, but not nearly as beautiful as Jane's, so I decided to hide my dress so my mother wouldn't make me return it. While she shopped for accessories to match the dress she bought, I shopped for the dress I was given. It was going to be a long week, but hopefully I would survive it. Wednesday. The days were going by in a blur and my days were literally numbered. For the past 2 days my mother had me shopping from makeup down till underwear. Seriously, Mom, I don't think the beast wants to get to know my undergarments. I barely spoke to any of my friends because they were either fiercely competitive or they were on the same boat as me and their moms were forcing them to go shopping. I haven't even had time for my boyfriend Jake. I had been so busy I almost forgot about him. Jake and I had been good friends since childhood because it was a small town and everyone knew everyone. He was my best friend and we shared everything with each other. When we started high school, we decided to date. At first it was all romance and relationships, but now during senior year, I felt as if the spark kind of blazed out. I finally got my mother to let me have a day without shopping and grooming. Jake and I had a date today and I couldn't wait to see him and just let all this stress go. Jake's house was on the other side of town and closer to the forest that surrounded half of our town. Jake's family was one of the few that hunted for the beast. When I say hunted, I mean full-on guns and ammunition, crossbow and arrows and very sharp daggers. Jake tried to teach me to shoot a gun one time, since his father has been teaching him since he was old enough to handle one. His ancestors believe that the beast was something that was sent by the devil to kidnap the women in our community, therefore it should be sent back. His grandfather also had a very close lead last 40 years, which led to him and the rest of the lunatic hunters into the forest in search of the beast. But strangely enough they never returned, and weeks after their bodies were found on the edge of the forest. I had to admit, hearing Jake tell me that story only heightened my fear. That is a main reason for the hatred both Jake and I held for both the beast and the ritual. When I pulled up at Jake's house I saw him approaching from his garage with his favorite toy, the crossbow. "Emery," he called when I got out. "Jake. Oh my gosh, I missed you so much. You have no idea what kind of torture my mom had me through," I said, rushing into his arms. "I'm so sorry, Pumpkin. I know how much you hate this, as much as I do, but I promise you that you wouldn't get taken, and if you did I would do what I'm best at and hunt down that godforsaken creature," he said, smiling down at me. We may be lacking our spark, but boy did he have a way with words. "Come on, I want to show you something," he said, taking one of my hand in one of his that didn't hold the crossbow, and pulled me towards the forest. "Jake, where are we going?" I asked. It was unlike him to take me into the forest even on the edge. "Just come on," he said, pulling me, and I followed hesitantly. When we finally stopped, it had been about 10 minutes of walking and there were duffel bags on the ground where we stood. "Jake, what are these?" I asked carefully. "These are our equipment, guns, and arrows to teach you. Emery, I love you and I can't risk losing you." "Oh, so you're going to play the love card?" "Jake, I'm not going to get taken, seriously." I can't believe he thought I was going to get taken. "But you said yourself that you hate the beast." "I'm not saying that you're going to be chosen, but we have no chance of knowing that for sure. However, you do have to attend this ritual," he said, as if he wanted me to be a part of the ritual. "Why? Do you want me to get taken?" I asked, baffled. "Of course not, Emery, but you have to be in this ritual. Please don't fight it," he said, opening his bag up, which produced a few guns. "Why am I such an important asset to this if I may not even be the one to get chosen?" I asked as he handed me a gun. "Emery, every girl of your age group is going to be there and the beast will only show up if everyone is there. Once everyone is there I can be one step closer to uncovering this story of what the beast actually island. Together, we can take it down once and for all. This opportunity only comes once in every 20 years. He begged. "So you are forcing me into this crap because of your stupid affiliation with the beast? You have got to be kidding me, Jake. I'm trying, okay? I'm going to give you some more practice in case something happens. I promise I would find you if need be, but you also need to learn to protect yourself," he said, gently caressing my face. "Stop it," I said, taking a step away from him. "You're practically selling me off to the devil just to fuel your obsession. Jake, the beast isn't real. Yeah, everyone is making me go to this ritual, but to hear the words from your mouth, well, that was just a blow to the gut," I said as I created more space between us while he walked towards me. "And, what makes you think you can actually catch this beast now?" I asked. "We finally have the technology for this. Please try to understand, the only thing I want more than that beast, is your safety," he said, coming closer. "Safety, my ass. And what technology can help you in finding this thing?" I asked. "Technology, Emery, has developed what we call a tracking device." He took a little chip out of his pocket and showed me it. "This chip will help us kill this beast once and for all," he said, smirking. How? Because you're going to stitch it onto dress. Jake, your delusion. What if it kills me or the dress gets wet or something? I said, trying to clarify every single fault with this chip. But what he said next was a fault in its own that didn't need clarification. Stitch the chip. He laughed. No, Emery. We're going to implant the chip into your hand. He said like it was the most obvious thing. Implant what now? You have got to be joking, right? I asked, but he only shook his head no. Jake, this is going too damn far. You can't implant a chip in me. I'm not your lab rat, and I am definitely not helping you in finding that beast. I said, backing away as he neared me with the chip and a knife he took out from his belt. Jake, what are you doing? I asked, and he continued walking towards me. Emery, please, we can do this the hard way or the easy way. And with that I ran as fast as my feet can take me. I was good at track, but Jake was a near champ. I could hear him running behind me, but I pushed my legs to go faster. Emery, wait. Emery, you don't know where you're going. But I kept running without any sense of direction. I didn't know the woods at all, but Jake knew it like the back of his hand. While I've never been in here, so I had no idea if I was headed towards his house or deeper into the forest. I started slowing down when I could no longer hear Jake's running and calling behind me, but I kept moving. I couldn't believe he actually wanted me to participate in this event just for his own motive, but what baffled me more was the chip. He wanted to actually put that piece of plastic in my hand. I continued walking and tears continued flowing, neither stopping. I walked for what felt like hours. Soon enough the mosquitoes came out and really started to bug me since I had on a jeans short. But what really worried me was the fact that the stars are now very brightly shining in the sky and I had no clue where I was going. I left my purse, which included my cell phone, in my car, and now I had no way of contacting anyone. From what turned out to be me running away from psychotic boyfriend have now turned into me being fully lost in the middle of the forest. A forest that was hundreds of acres long and densely filled with trees. I tried using the stars to guide me, but considering I didn't know how to, I just gave up after about a half hour at looking at the sky. It was quite beautiful really. The thousands of stars dancing around the moon was really spectacular and a sight for sore eyes. With all the artificial lights in town, the stars weren't nearly as prominent as this. After walking for about an hour more, my feet became weak and gave out beneath me. I looked for a dry patch on the ground and sat down leaning on a tree. I felt exhausted and my eyes became drowsy as sleep came over me. My eyes were closing, but there was suddenly a rustling behind the trees a few feet away from me. My adrenaline suddenly kicked in and was in full gear. My eyes flew open and I jumped to my feet in a flash. I could hear the crunching of leaves as something approached me, and I prayed to God it wasn't the psychotic Jake. Who knew what he would do when he found me? I would prefer it to be the beast than Jake. At least it might kill me faster, but Jake might just torture me and implant that stupid chip. The thing got closer and closer. My heart dropped to my stomach, my hands became clammy and I started to cold sweat, something that happens when I'm frightened. What if it was the beast? What would it do? Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. But I was surprised, relieved, scared as hell and confused at what came out. Surprised because of who came out. Relieved of who didn't came out, scared as hell of what could happen now, and confused as to why the person was here. It was a guy, and he was the most incredible man I have ever laid eyes on. He looked about 20 years old. He had dark brown hair and gorgeous chocolate eyes. His jaw looked chiseled enough for me to seriously cut my finger from just touching it. He was breathtaking. But being alone in the woods with a stranger, well, I guess you can see the multitude of issues here. I snapped out of my daze and held my posture high to give off a little intimidation, but boy was I scared as ever on the inside. My brain was screaming to run, but I knew it would only get worse if he knows I'm scared, and my legs were aching. When I looked back at him, he was looking at me in amazement and wonder. At least I think it was amazement. I cleared my throat and brought him back from his reverie and asked, "Who are you? And what are you doing in the middle of the forest? You're beautiful." He mumbled so silently I wasn't sure if that was what he said. He looked at me in amusement and said, "I can ask the same of you." Wow. His voice was like silk but manly with a hint of authority. "Well, I asked first," I stated. "Okay, fair. I'm hunting and heard something walked by. Now what are you doing here?" "I got lost." "No use lying. Why are you wandering around in the forest alone?" "Let's just say my boyfriend turned out to be a loon." He seemed hurt when I said that but quickly recovered. "So he left you out here, all alone? Not knowing of what creatures may be lurking out here?" I could see he was struggling to not get angry. "No, I ran away." "Ran away? Why?" "For certain reason, all right." I snapped at him for invading my privacy. "All right, sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," he said, and I suddenly realized that I never saw this boy in my life. It was hard to not know someone in our small town. "Wait, why have I never seen you before?" I asked, and he looked a little taken aback. "Because I'm not from Fairbairn," he stated simply. "Okay." I trailed off waiting for him to continue, but he didn't. "So do you know your way out of here?" I asked. "Well, that depends. Where do you want to go?" he asked, walking towards me, automatically making me walk backwards. "Back to Fairbairn. Do you know your way or not?" I asked and kept walking backwards till my back hit the tree. Shit, he was still walking towards me. He stopped directly in front of me. "Yes, I do. But are you sure you want to leave?" he asked, looking directly into my eyes. Something in his eyes almost made me say that I didn't, and I wanted to stay with him, but I knew better, that I had to get out of here. Now. "Yes. Now if you can please show me out, I will leave you in peace to carry on with your hunting," I said, pushing him away, and walking forward. "You're going the wrong way," I heard him call amusingly. Yeah, I did ask you for help, but you were too busy interrogating me," I said, and he started walking in another direction, so I followed. I silently prayed to God that he actually took me back to town instead of trying something. Boys these days, no matter how long you know them, you can't ever trust them. Jake was a classic example of that. When we walked back, things had gotten exceptionally quiet and awkward. The silence was actually deafening, and I felt sad that he had nothing to say, so I decided to be the conversational one. "So, what were you hunting?" I asked. He turned back and looked at me in surprise as he answered. "Just the usual," he said. "The usual? You're not one of the beast hunters, are you? Because if you are, just know that I think you guys are way past insane." And with that he chuckled. "Actually no, I'm not one of the insane beast hunters. Just a regular normal hunter that catches deer and rabbits. Why look for something that doesn't want to be found, right?" he said, and I felt relieved that I wasn't with another lunatic. "Right. I mean, seriously, how do they even know this beast exists?" I said. "Do you believe it exists?" he suddenly asked, throwing me off guard. "Well, I mean, I guess it could be a possibility, but then again there isn't any proof," I said, watching his reaction. He looked somewhat disappointed. "So what you're saying is that you don't believe. What I'm saying is that whether or not it's real, I just want to get the ritual over with," I said. He looked hurt when I said that, but he didn't say anything, and I didn't want to make this any more weird. About a half hour later I started to see the lights of Jake's house. I felt frightened at first to go back there, but the stranger's presence was kind of comforting. I felt somewhat safe knowing he was with me. As we neared the edge of the forest, he stopped and caused me turn around, confused. "Aren't you leaving as well?" "It's quite late," I said. "No, I have to get back hunting," he simply said. "Okay, sure," I said, turning around to leave. But I was stopped when he grabbed my hand and spun me around, causing me to turn straight into his chest. But the electricity I felt was indescribable. It felt like my entire arm was on fire, a pleasurable fire. "I forgot to ask for your name," he said. "Emery," I answered. "And you are?" I said, feeling stupid for now asking for his name. Instead of answering me, he just leaned down and whispered into my ear, "Soon, darling." Very soon. In a matter of seconds he let me go and walked away. His pace was too fast for me to follow behind and question him. I would have gotten lost again if I did. I turned back around and wondered what he meant by soon, but didn't think too hard on it as I may never meet him again. When I reached Jake's house, I looked around carefully, making sure that Jake was nowhere in sight. Who knows what he might do if he saw me? When there were no signs of him, I took my car key out and dashed across his lawn and jumped into my car. I speed off towards my house without a second look back. For the rest of the ride home, I couldn't stop thinking about the handsome stranger I met today. I know he was mysterious and creepy to be in the woods like that, but he did help me, and for that I couldn't have been more grateful. But there was still one question on my mind: who was he? The day was finally upon us. Saturday, the day of the ritual to the beast, also known as the day I might be sacrificed. Whether I was taken or not was solely up to the eerie and mysterious beast. I hadn't seen Jake since the day I left him in the woods. The day I also met the stranger in the woods. I hadn't been able to get Jake's actions out of my head. He seriously wanted to cut my hand open and implant a chip for his stupid infatuation with the beast. I have known him for as long as I can remember and trusted him with my life, and he just turned out to be a total lunatic. I liked him a lot, but after that night, I wasn't so sure again. Jake's memory had me sulking, but what lightened my mood was the memory of the Greek god of a stranger. He was one handsome hunter. I guessed he must have been from some other town not too far away, because if he was from this town I would have remembered that face. But what I couldn't quite figure out was why he said, "Soon, darling." Very soon, when I asked him for his name. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Was he going to be there for the festival, or was he going to be in town soon? His answer was very vague and confusing, but all I knew was that I wanted to see him again. When he went back into the forest, I felt like a 3-year-old whose Christmas present was taken away on Christmas morning. I didn't know a single thing about him, yet I felt this way. The lunar eclipse tonight must really be messing with my head. The ritual was set to start at midnight as always. I have never been to one of the rituals to actually see what happens, as no one was supposed to be outside that time, and the last one took place before I was born. The only persons allowed outside were the elders that made sure every girl arrived on time and that everything before midnight ran smoothly. But before the ritual began they had to leave the area and go back to their homes. The elders was a group made up centuries ago when the ritual was started. It consisted of a board of members who were usually the respected senior citizens of Fairbairn. When they passed, their children usually took their place. But whatever they knew was always kept tight-knit, and their lips were always sealed. Parents of the girls were permitted to drop their daughters off and say their last goodbye, but again had to leave the area before the ritual began. The only real persons allowed to stay were the girls and a few guards around town who were hired by the elders to keep the hunters away. Jake was of age and a part of the top hunting family, so he was probably going to try to be out tonight after curfew. The hunters also made sure that all girls are present to the ritual so they wouldn't lose their chance of finding this beast. You may think I'm crazy for saying this, but I hope Jake will be fine. He may have wanted to implant a chip in me, but I know he is a good guy deep inside. Really, really far deep inside. Everybody else is supposed to stay locked in their homes and never sneak a peek outside. Everyone complied easily as they were afraid of the beast. My entire day was spent with my mom and sister grooming me for the ritual while my father sulked about losing his daughter. But I kept reminding them all that I had a huge chance of not being taken, as there were many beautiful girls who were also a part of tonight's ritual. By 11 o'clock in the night my hair was styled and my makeup was done. My mom gave me the dress she bought for me and left me to change. I wrested her dress aside and pulled out the dress Jane gave me. It was one of the most beautiful dresses I had ever seen. If I didn't have to attend this darn ritual, I would definitely wear this dress when I got married. But unfortunately I did have to attend, so I only hoped the beast didn't rip me to shreds. When I looked at myself in the mirror after I put my dress on, it finally hit me that it was actually time. I would either be back in my room by the morning, or this would be the last time I would ever see my family or be in this room. I quickly dug through my nightstand and found a recent picture of my family and I, which was taken on Christmas. We were all happy and together. I put the picture in my bra as we were not allowed to take anything with us. Nothing to remind us of our family or this town. I put my shoes on and went downstairs to where my family was waiting. Oh my gosh, Emery, you look amazing. Where did you get that dress? My mother asked when I descended down the stairs. A friend gave it to me, I said, not wanting to dwell too much on it as my parents never allow us to accept anything for free, especially an expensive dress. Okay, but if you're here tomorrow, sweetheart, you will return this dress, my mother said. When I looked over to my little sister Avery, she looked heartbroken. She was only 15 and as much as she wanted to partake in the ritual she couldn't, and losing me would be terrible for her. We were really close since she was born. We were sisters and best friends. I don't know what I would do without her. Emery, she said, rushing into my arms crying. It was a lucky thing I had on waterproof mascara, or else I would have been a mess. I felt another pair of arms wrapped around us and I saw my mother crying as well. My dad joined soon after. My girls, what am I going to do without you all? He said, sniffling, trying to hide his tears. We all just stood there wrapped in each other's embrace as a family, trying to ease the pain of what could be a lost. Trying to lighten the mood, I said, ugh, you guys are ruining my hair, I said in a really girly voice. They all laughed and let go of each other, but I could still see the sorrow in their eyes. You'll always be beautiful, no matter what, honey, my mother said, hugging me again. And you'll always be our little girl, my father said. They all stepped out of the house with me in tow. Before I closed the door, I took one last look at my house. I took one last look at where all my memories were held from a child, hoping that this wasn't my last time here. By the time we left, it was 11:30, and it took 10 minutes to reach the edge of the forest from my house. As we drove, I noticed that there was absolutely no one outside. Nothing, not even an owl was heard. It was like the world was paused. The only lights on were the street lights and the moonlight. The full moon that would quickly turn into the blood moon next half hour. It was quite strange driving through town like this. Sooner rather than later, we pulled up at the edge of the forest next to the other cars of the parents. When we got out of the car, there was a guy waiting to check the names of the girls off the list. Name? He asked, holding his clipboard. Emery Aiken, I said. All right, Emery Aiken, right this way, he said, smiling as if I was not about to enter a human sacrifice. All the girls are here, he announced to the elders. The elders, who were the most knowledgeable of the ritual, made sure to oversee that it runs without a hitch. Welcome everyone. Today we are here to join in the ritual to the beast, one of the elderly women said. I hope you girls are excited to be here and enjoy in this festival. Speak for yourself, buddy, I thought. Well, shall we start the ritual to the beast? Another elder asked us, and most just nodded their heads. 2 minutes before everyone leaves, someone said, I'm going to miss you so much, dear. My mother said, giving me a hug. I'm going to miss you too, Mom, I said. And what about me? Avery asked, hugging us. I'm going to miss you most of all, kid, I said, hugging her tightly. We love you, dear, my family said as they got into their car. Love you too, I called back at them. When they went into their car, everyone else's parents went as well. I looked around and saw about 100 girls, all dressed in different white dresses. Some were a bit indecent, but some were over the top. I mean, what made them think showing off their assets were going to get the beast? But what really made me laugh was the puffy, princess ball gowns that some wore. Weren't they going to be uncomfortable when they got chained up and have to wait for God knows how long? I went up to my really good friend Marn, who, like me, didn't believe in this whole ritual folktale. Hey Marn, nice dress, I said, smiling at her and glad that she wasn't one to wear the indecent or over-the-top dress, but instead a simple strapless dress. Oh my gosh, Emery, where have you been? I have been trying to get away from all these crazies here. She rambled and hugged me. Hey there to you too, I said, laughing at her outburst. Also, where did you get this dress? It's as gorgeous, like out of this world beautiful, she squealed, beaming at my dress. A friend gave it to me, I said. A friend? Then she wiggled her eyebrows playfully. Is this friend a certain Jake? She asked. No, actually Jake and I are over, I said. Over? She frowned. What happened? But before I could answer her, the elders and the guys with the chains called us over. I'll tell you later, I said as we headed to the forest. Some of the elders carried torches to lead us into the dark, creepy forest since it was pitch black. I looked back and darkness consumed everywhere around us that wasn't covered in light. The men with chains led each one of us to a different tree that were meters away from each other. I didn't realize that we would all be sitting away from each other. It was far enough where we weren't able to see one another due to the darkness and other trees, but we were all close enough to talk to the person who was chained next to us. One of the men instructed me to sit on the ground as he took the chains, that were more like shackles, and placed my hands in the cuffs and wrapped the chain around the tree trunk a few times and placed a padlock to ensure it wouldn't move. The coldness of the metal sent a blood-curdling feeling to settle within me. By the time each of us were locked in place on our own tree, the men with the chains left and the elders left with a few words. So girls, I wish you all the best. Now it's our turn to retire for the night and return to the absence of one of you. All we can say is that whoever will be gone, will be dearly missed. Now we hope you girls sit and don't try to run, an elderly woman said, smiling at us as she turned and left with the others. When they left, we had 15 minutes left until midnight. With probably a few minutes left, I looked up to the full moon and saw the darkness that was the Earth's shadow completely engulf the moon, and the moon faded into a red sinister color. It was as if blood was splattered on the moon, but soon the entire moon was a deep red and the sky illuminated the color. All the whispering from the girls was soon turned into labored breaths as everyone witnessed the phenomenon of the blood moon. I could hear the loud clock from the town, struck 12, signaling the start of the ritual to the beast. The blood moon was at its peak in the sky, shining down with all its red glory. There was a distant howl not too far away. I could hear everyone mumbling around me frantically, but I just looked at the moon, praying for this all to be over with fast. I heard the loud thumping of footsteps echoing through the forest. This was suddenly becoming too real. I felt my heart start to quicken and the unwanted feeling of fright enter me. The thumping became louder and louder until I heard it heading this way. The footsteps finally approached us as it slowed down, and I could practically feel it standing just beyond the trees in front of me. My curiosity took over and I suddenly felt the urge to open my eyes and see what it was, what the infamous beast was. Slowly I opened my eyes and looked straight at the beast, but it wasn't any beast, no. It was a wolf. A gigantic wolf that held the size of a bear. And it was looking directly at me. Red eyes stared straight at me as it took one step at a time and revealed its entire body. The wolf had pitch black fur. Its red eye reminded me of the blood moon above us. It was quite beautiful, but the fact that it might kill me brought me back from my thoughts. Oh God, I was going to die for sure. Everyone knew wolves killed people. They were carnivores. It was looking directly at me. Its next meal. When I looked it in its eye, I could sense danger, but there was also an uncanny feeling of safety, as if it would protect me. I could hear the other girls around me all hyperventilating or going crazy with fright. I had no idea if they saw what I'm seeing or if there were others. The beast, or in this case, the wolf, walked right up to me, never taking its eyes off of me. I couldn't blink either. It was like we were both in a trance. I felt compelled by the creature. The beast stopped directly in front of me and sniffed the air, to which its eyes turned a darker crimson color. When it sniffed me, it let out a loud ear-splitting howl. I cringed back from the sound, but when it saw my reaction, it suddenly stopped and whimpered as if he knew it was hurting me. The wolf then did the last thing I would think of. The wolf bent its large body towards mine and moved his head to my neck. I honestly thought it was going to bite me. But instead it licked the right side of my neck. There was a blazing heat that passed through my body when he did that. The wolf took its eyes away from me for the first time since it saw me and looked at my hands. It took its big paw with sharp nails and broke open both my handcuffs that were attached to the chain that held me to the tree. This was becoming too frightening. I suddenly felt very sick, and my head became dizzy. There were suddenly more wolves of various size and color that appeared behind the wolf in front of me, but they all seemed to have went to the other girls. This all felt insane, and I felt as if I was going insane. My vision then became clouded with black spots, and I heard the wolf that was in front of me whimper again. My eyes snapped close and I went unconscious, feeling the warm fur of something holding me up. I slowly felt consciousness. My head was resting on something hard, or someone, since there was heat radiating of it. But the person smelt amazing, like the forest mixed with a sort of spice scent. There were arms under me, carrying me. I could feel the movement of the person walking with me in their arms. I tried to pry my eyes open to see where I was and who was carrying me, but they were shut closed. I tried to move, but I couldn't. Then I remembered. The beast. It took me. Was I dead? I felt my mind was blanking again as I slowly fell into unconsciousness for the second time. When I regained consciousness, I was no longer being carried. I could hear the loud rushing and trickling of water nearby. I also heard the shuffling of something's feet near me. I only prayed it wasn't the beast. I slowly pried my eyes open to realize that I was facing the dark sky of the night. I slowly sat up, terrified to make any sudden movement, and realized that I had been lying on the ground of a clearing somewhere in the mountains. There were large rocks around, and I felt the soreness from laying on the ground. To my left I saw the most incredible view in front of my eyes, a waterfall. Never in all my life have I ever seen one in person. It was absolutely stunning. It was large and the scenery was amazing. There were many beautiful vines to the side, and the moonlight that reflected off it was incredible. The water was an iridescent blue which appeared as if the water was glowing under the moonlight. Then I remembered that it was the night of the blood moon. The beast had taken me. My thoughts were cut short when I heard something walk behind me. My body instantly tensed and I froze in place, not wanting to know what it was. It was the beast, I was almost positive. I could practically feel his body heat radiating off him. I gently stood up from where I was sitting, not daring to turn around. When I stood up, it was a bit difficult to stand since I was still in my heels and it was a rocky area. I could hear the crunching of grass moving closer, and I decided to turn around. And there he was, looking directly into my eyes, trying to show me he wasn't a treat by stopping in his tracks. The stranger. The same strange guy I met in the woods the day Jake tried to implant that chip in me. The same stranger that I hadn't been able to get out of my head. I let out a sigh of relief. But then I tensed up. How was he here? Why was he here? Where was the beast? All these damn questions is starting to give me a headache. You, I said. What the hell are you doing here? I asked, panicked. Hello to you too, he said, smiling as he took a step towards me. I automatically took a step back. I would never hurt you, he said when he saw my movement. Where is the beast? I asked. He hesitated a moment before he answered me. The beast, as you so graciously put it, left. Left? What do you mean he left? He can't leave. Isn't he supposed to, I don't know, kill me or something? I asked, exasperated. Or something. The stranger quietly mumbled. Wait, what are you doing here? I asked for the second time, trying to avoid his weirdness. I found you in the forest, just laying there. He motioned to the ground. His story was by far the stupidest thing I have ever heard, because A, the beast doesn't just leave the girl, or else all the girls that were ever taken would have returned by now, and B, no was allowed to step foot out of their homes, let alone in the forest. Even if he was from somewhere besides Fairbairn, the elders told us that no one was allowed to go into the forest, not even someone from a neighboring town. Okay, I said, going along with him. I still had no idea who this guy was. So why are you here? I continued to question. Because I wasn't just going to leave you out here in the forest. Besides the beast, the woods are filled with dangerous creatures, he said. Weren't you afraid the beast would come back looking for me? I continued my interrogation. He isn't coming back, he stated simply. How do you know what the beast is or isn't doing? I asked. Because I just do, he said with a shrug. You can't just know that. You do, however, know that if and when this aforementioned beast returns, he's going to hunt us down, right? I questioned. He took a step closer and said, and how do you know that? He asked with a smile. The beast, as we all call it, is a dog. A huge oversized dog, creature, which is scary as fuck. I explained. Language, he said as if he was scolding a 5-year-old. Sorry. I mumbled quietly, but when I saw him smile I knew he heard even if he was at a distance. Dude must have really clean ears. I didn't even know why I apologized. And it's not a dog, he said, putting emphasis on the word dog. Oh, it isn't? I said, raising my eyebrows. Then what exactly would you call that big fur ball that stands on 4 feet? A wolf, he said with pride. Wait, pride? A wolf isn't that big, I said, because I saw Jake hunt a wolf already and it was the normal size of a dog. It was a special wolf, he said as if that should clarify it. A special wolf? Am I supposed to know what that means? I asked, folding my arms because I felt cold. It was freezing in the woods and my dress just so happened to be sleeveless. You're cold, he said, concerned, while walking towards me while shrugging his jacket off. Wow there, buddy, hold your horses, I said, putting my hand out to stop his movement. I promise I'm not going to hurt you, he said as a look of hurt flashed across his face. Haven't you heard? A promise is a fool's comfort, I said. Haha. He said sarcastically and continued walking towards me. Wait, what are you doing? I asked as he came up to me and took off his jacket. Dude, seriously, I'm getting claustrophobic here, I said when he leaned closer and his arms went around me. When he told me to lift my arms backward I got a little terrified, so I did the one thing that a normal person would do. Well, what I would and did do anyways. I kneed him in the groin and stepped away as he fell at my feet on his knees. Before I could even comprehend that I had done, he got up without a look of pain. What the hell? Wasn't that supposed to hurt like hell? Good shot, he complimented. You have a really pointy knee, he pointed out. What? He asked when he just saw me standing there with a confused expression. Aren't you supposed to be like doubled over in pain or something? I asked, still shocked. Well, you know how they say buns of steel? He asked and I nodded. Well, I got balls of steel, he said cockily. Okay, not the best choice of word for the subject at hand. Ew, gross. I don't want to hear about your thing, I said, covering my ears. My poor virgin ears, I whined. He just looked at me like I was crazy and laughed. They're all yours, babe, he said after his fit of laughter. Don't call me that, I said angrily. Okay, babe. Whatever you say, babe, he said, annoying me further. I just shot him a death glare. If looks could kill, well, you know he's be 6 feet under by now. Look, you can stay here all night if you want, but I'm going home, I said, turning even though I have no idea where I'm going. He looked panicked and ran to where I was standing before I could even move a foot. No, you can't, he said, blocking me. Why can't I? I asked, confused. Clearly the beast or wolf or whatever it was, didn't want me, so I'm going home, I said, sidestepping him. He could still be out there, he said frantically. But you said he was gone and he wouldn't hurt me, I said, catching him in his lie. Yeah, but I'm not a wolf whisperer, plus last time I met you, you were lost in the woods. He pointed out. Yeah, but I recently installed a GPS in my brain, so I'm good to go, I said, continuing to walk. Emery, he called me, and I stopped, frozen in place. You remembered my name? I asked, turning around. Of course I remembered, he said, walking towards me. Now, unless you're crazy and actually installed a GPS in your brain, why don't you let me take you home? The same place as last time? He asked. I was surprised. He said he'll take me home after acting crazy, but I really wanted to get home. I was dead tired, and even though I have barely walked in these heels, they were aggravating me. Yes, can you take me back to Fairbairn? I asked. Yeah, sure, he said, holding his hand out for mine. I looked at it and then looked at him and shook my head no. Here, take my jacket, he said, giving it to me. Thank you, I said gratefully as I pushed my hands into the long sleeves. When I shrugged it on, I was engulfed in his amazing scent. I just wanted to sniff it all day. Yeah, I must have hit my head when the beast took me. Lead the way, Captain Stranger, I said. Captain Stranger? He asked with a smile. Well, you still haven't told me your name. Or how you knew we would meet again, I said, remembering his words. Soon, darling. Very soon. I haven't, have I? He asked with a smirk. Not that I recall, no, I said. Wait, you aren't planning to harm me and then leave me without a trace of your identity, are you? I said, moving away from him as we began walking away from the waterfall. No, I told you I'm not going to hurt you, he said reassuringly. Good, cause I would have castrated you, I said honestly. He looked a bit scared for a moment but quickly covered it up. So how do you know the forest this good? I asked when I moved back closer to him. You ask a lot of questions, you know that? He said with a smile. I then heard him whisper something, but I wasn't sure if I heard correct. He said something along the lines of, "You're going to make a great Luna." Deciding he was enough of a crazy person, I decided to let it slide. But what the hell was a Luna? You still haven't answered my question, I trailed off. Didn't I tell you that I hunt? He asked. Yeah, but dude, you seem to know the entire freaking forest like the back of your hand. That's insane, I said, looking at him smirking. One of my many talents. He winked at his double-meaning sentence. You're strange, you know that, stranger. I'll take it as a compliment, he said. Whatever floats your boat, buddy, I mumbled. So are you ever going to tell me your name? I asked again. If you must know, it's DH, I cut him off before he could finish. Your name is Theo. That's so cool, I had a dog named Theo, I said excitedly. No, it's not Theo, and what happened to your dog? He asked curiously. It's not? I asked disappointingly. Well, Theo kinda jumped the fence and ran away, I said. Well, I'm sorry about your dog, he said honestly. It's all right, I replaced him with a cat named Shio. I shrugged, but this time he definitely looked at me like I grew two heads. So if your name isn't Theo, then what is it? I curiously asked. It's Thane, he said. Thane, I said, trailing off, waiting for him to continue. He clearly didn't understand because he just looked down at me and said, What? What's your last name? I said, shaking my head. Oh, it's Blackwood, he said, rubbing behind his neck like he was nervous. Nice name, Thane Blackwood, it's very unique, I said, smiling at him, and his eyes held a lustful look and seemed to darken in color. And what about you, Emery, what's your last name? He asked, and when he said my name it sounded like silk. Beautiful, even if I did have a weird name. Wouldn't you like to know? I said with a wink. I actually would, he replied. Just when I was about to answer him with another smart-ass remark, I heard a rustling from behind the tree a few feet away from us. I instantly flew into Thane's arms. He opened his arms and held me close to him. I don't know why, but I felt safe and secure in Thane's arms. Just being near him eased my tension. I didn't know what was happening to me. I buried my head in his chest and I heard him sniffing me. What the hell? When I realized we weren't moving or being attacked by the beast, I opened my eyes and saw Thane smiling down at me. I came to my senses and pushed him away. I turned and looked around and saw nothing. What was that? I said, moving to stand closer to him. It wasn't the beast, he assured me as if he knew what I was thinking. Then what was it? I asked, looking back at him. It was a deer, he said, pointing behind me. When I turned to where he was pointing at, I saw a gorgeous deer walking out from behind the trees. I moved behind Thane because I was afraid that it would attack me, which was a stupid assumption. But I didn't really have any experience in the deer department. It's alright, he wouldn't hurt you, Thane said, putting a hand behind my back and gently moving me towards the deer. I tensed at his touch and he released me. But being the chicken that I am, I quickly grabbed his hand and put my hand in his. I couldn't help but think that it fit perfectly in his manly hands and the tingles were electrifying. I moved to the deer gently and slowly, trying to not make any sudden movements and scare it away while pulling Thane behind me. I came up close enough to touch it but was unsure of what to do next. Gently place your hand on his head, Thane whispered in my ear as he raised my hand in his and gently placed it on the deer. He moved my hand in a stroking movement on the deer as he stood right behind me. I held one of his hand and the other he was holding to touch the deer. I mustered the courage to pet him by myself, so I turned my head to Thane and gave him a reassuring smile as I let his hand go and he removed his other hand from where we were stroking the deer. I was actually doing it, I was touching a deer. Even though I was okay with touching the deer, Thane remained close behind me and put his hands on my waist and gave me a reassuring squeeze. The deer moved away from my hand and I got a little scared from its sudden movement, but Thane pulled me behind him in a protective stance. But the deer didn't want to hurt me, it just gracefully walked away behind some trees and out of sight. I turned to Thane with an excited expression and he held one of admiration. That was epic on so many proportions. I squealed like a little girl who saw a unicorn. You were great, he said, pulling me in a side hug. You really know your way around animals, don't you? I commented with a smile. Well, I don't like to brag, but they do love me, he said with a smirk. Egotistical, aren't you? I said, pulling away from the too long of a hug. And it's Aiken, I said, referring to his question. Aiken? He asked, confused. Yes, I'm little old Emery Aiken, I said, and he just smiled. We continued walking and my feet started to pain me, so I stopped and held on to Thane's arm as I took my shoe off. When I touched his arm, however, I felt a tingling sensation. I knew he felt it too because his arm twitched from my touch. I ignored it and took off my shoes. When I looked at him, his eyes still held that lustful look. I turned away from him and continued walking and he snapped out of his trance. Let me hold them, he said, taking me off guard. What? I asked, confused. Let me hold your shoes, he said, putting his hand out for my heels. No, I can hold my own shoes, I said. Either let me hold your shoes or carry you, he said, giving me a look. Why do you want to hold my shoes? I asked. Okay, I'm carrying you, he said, moving closer to. Wait, here, I said, shoving the shoes in his chest. Thank you, he said, holding it. But why do you want to hold my shoes? I asked, confused as always, because what kind of gentleman would I be if I didn't? Plus you're already holding up your dress, he said. Your mother raised you right, I commented. He nodded and changed the topic. You look exhausted. I feel how I look, I said, yawning. We're almost there, he said, but I couldn't see any lights from the town from where we were. When we reached the edge of the forest, however, it wasn't my old town. The buildings were completely different and I have never seen this place before. When I turned to ask Thane where we were, he just had a sad look on his face. "I'm sorry, Emery," he said with a guilty expression. Before I could say anything, I felt something hit the back of my head, and I started seeing black spots. I braced for the impact of my fall, but I felt hands support me and that was it. I fell unconscious for the third time tonight. I felt my senses coming back to me. I was laying on something soft, but my head felt like I had been hit with a hammer multiple times. If that wasn't bad enough, I could hear the annoying voices of people talking around me. I tried opening my eyes, but the damn thing wouldn't budge. "I told you to knock her out, not put her in a coma," a male voice shouted. It was familiar and angry. "Well, you didn't quite give me specifics. Plus the doctor said she'll be fine, just give her a couple of hours." Another male voice answered, but in a slightly fearful tone. I was scared of the first guy and the anger wasn't even directed at me. "A couple of hours? I swear to God, if she doesn't wake up I'm going to rip your throat out," the familiar voice shouted, boiling with anger. "Just calm down," the other guy started but was interrupted by the familiar one. "Calm down? I can't calm down. My mate isn't waking up because of you," he shouted. "Mate? What did he think, I was his friend? His mate? Look." The guy told the angry one. "What?" the familiar guy said harshly. "She's waking up," the other guy said as my hands started to twitch. "Leave," the familiar guy growled. I heard a door open and closed and then I felt a presence beside me. The heat radiated off of him and his scent filled my nose. I had no idea who this person was. "Emery, please wake up," he begged, then everything hit me like a wrecking ball. Everything from the beast to going unconscious to meeting Thane and then him taking me back home. Except he didn't take me home, he knocked me out. My eyes flew open and I was staring into warm brown eyes. "Emery," he said, taking my hand in his. I didn't reply, I only removed my hand from his and sat up. "Where am I?" I asked gently. "Safe, I swear," he said, moving closer to me. I asked, "Where am I?" I screamed at him, letting all my anger pour out. "You're in my house," he said. "No shit, Sherlock, I meant as in, why am I not in my house? Why are you still here with me?" I asked. "Emery, it's a long story but you have to trust me," he said, moving closer to me. "Don't you dare touch me," I said with anger lacing my voice when he was an inch away from me. He held a hurt expression but I didn't care. This guy was psychotic. "He kidnapped me, for crying out loud. Let me explain," he said, moving back. "Oh, trust me, you have a lot of explaining to do. Why not start with why the hell did you kidnap me?" I asked. "I will explain, but you aren't in the best mental state right now," he said. "My mental state? You're the one that kidnapped me," I said, exasperated. "I didn't kidnap you," he said tiredly. "You didn't? So, then why am I here?" I asked, looking around for the first time. I was inside a bedroom, and boy was it huge. It was probably triple the size of my room back home. There was a door to my right and I was fairly certain that door led out of the room. "Can I have a glass of water?" I asked, trying to divert his attention. "Yeah, anything else?" he said as he quickly moved to the nightstand that held a jug of water and a glass. I didn't reply. Instead, I moved off the bed in a flash and ran to the door. I opened the door that led out to a long hallway that went straight down to a kitchen and living area. I didn't have time to think as I saw the staircase and bounded down as I heard Thane calling me back from the hallway. I chose to ignore him as I heard his footsteps not so far behind me. I dashed down the stairs that went on for about 2 flights until I came to the last floor and bumped into someone. "Shit," I mumbled as I fell down. "What are you doing here? Are you okay?" a guy asked me. I had never seen him before, but he seemed to know me. He held his hand out for me to take and he pulled me up. He was holding onto my arm when I heard an ear-piercing growl from behind me. "Get your hands off her." I didn't have to turn around to know who he was. The anger made it clear. The guy removed his hands from me faster than expected and moved a good few feet away from me as if I held a disease. Thane came in front of me as fast as the guy moved and threw him a warning. "If you ever touch or look at her ever again, I wouldn't think twice about sparing your life." As horrifying as his words were, I somehow felt a sense of safety and security being this close to him. "I think I may be going insane. Are you all right?" he asked me when the guy left. I didn't know what to say or do, so I just stood as still as stone. "Are you hungry?" he asked, and I still didn't reply. He let out a loud sigh and pulled me down the hall. "Crap, I think he's going to kill me now." We walked over to a massive room that was the kitchen. It was every chef's dream. Thane pulled me to the countertop and placed me on a stool. "What would you like to eat?" he asked. "I want to go home." I mumbled. "Pancakes at Island," he said as he turned around and began pulling out ingredients. "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" "Why me?" I questioned while trying to will the tears away. He ignored me as he continued with his cooking. "Why won't you answer me?" I yelled at him. He walked closer to me and had a guilty expression. "Emery, please, I will explain everything to you in due time, but please, relax." "Relax? How in God's name am I supposed to relax? You freaking kidnapped me and you want me to be grateful?" "You know, you're really starting to irritate me now," he said. "Wow, that's just great. I have no idea where the hell I am and you're irritated? Well, why don't you just kill me? Anything would be better than being in this hell hole with you. You think I wanted to kidnap you? You think I wanted it to be like this? I can see the hate you harbor for me in your eyes and it's killing me. I know this is hard for you to understand and handle, but I just need you to trust me, please." Thane begged. The sincerity in his eyes made me feel a wave of guilt for exploding on him, but I needed to know what was going on. "I will give you some time. But this conversation isn't over," I said to him. He gave me a grateful expression and smiled at me before he turned back to his task at hand. "So tell me about yourself," Thane said after a couple of minutes. "No way. You're my kidnapper, remember? Plus you didn't answer any of my questions, so fair is only fair." I quirked at him with a smirk. "Okay, I guess you're right," he said. I thought he gave up on the conversation before he continued. "But tell me, did you actually believe I would hurt you, let alone kill you?" He turned towards me and asked with a serious expression. I was compelled to tell him no so I wouldn't hurt him, but I must remember that he kidnapped me, so I went with the truth. "Yes," I stammered. "You were a stranger in the forest. What else was I supposed to think?" I asked him. "Plus you did knock me out." "I suppose you're right," he murmured as his expression fell. "But I didn't knock you out though. That would have hurt me more than it hurt you." He got a plate of pancakes for me and turned back with a smile while I was a bit flustered by his words. "So when do you plan on telling me what exactly I'm doing here?" I asked once again as I began to eat. "You really are determined, aren't you?" he stated, but instead of anger he looked happy and almost proud. "But to answer your question, I will tell you as soon as I'm sure you wouldn't run," he said mysteriously as he leaned in closely. My breathing hitched and part of me was saying lean in, but the more rational part was saying to run, and that's what I did. I ran. Where to? Well, I just ran until I found a huge door. I dashed past numerous people in the house who all gave me curious glances. I dashed out the front door and was instantly surrounded by the forest and a road leading to God knows where. Just as I was about to run towards the highway of hell, something latched onto my wrist. More like someone. "Thane. Emery," he shouted, when I struggled. "What?" I whipped around and asked. "What do you want from me?" I asked him. "You're testing my nerves." I told you to give me time. He said, gritting his teeth. Well, I'm sorry, okay, but I just can't. I have no idea where I am. I don't know anyone here. I was taken in the middle of the night by an animal and you expect me to be okay? To give you time? I can't, Thane. I can't just be okay with this because quite frankly I think I'm stuck in some nightmare. I screamed. Is that how you truly feel? He asked. Yes, I answered confidently. Fine then, let's go. He said, and he started walking towards the forest. Where are you going? I asked. To explain everything. From the beginning. He told me with one last look before he continued towards the forest. Thane walked ahead of me into the forest. I was a bit weary at first, but I needed my answers, so I followed behind him. He was angry. I could practically see it radiating off him, but at the moment I didn't care. Not knowing if I was going to get my answers or my impending death. We walked for what seemed like miles. So you're not much of a talker, are you? I asked to break the eerie silence. Thane seemed to cool down a bit, but he was a bit of a hothead. He ignored me like I thought he would, so I continued to pester him. While we were walking, I gathered a few pebbles and began throwing them at his back. He didn't bother at first, but about a few minutes later he finally turned back at me. You do realize that is not causing me pain, right? He rhetorically asked. Damn it. I muttered under my breath, but his hearing seems to be impeccable as he turned to me with a glare. I gave him a sheepish smile, and when he turned back to the trail, I rolled my eyes at him. Not giving up on my scheming, I found a stick and did what I do best. Annoy the crap out of people, and in this case that person was Thane Blackwood. I began poking him all over, from his side to his back and his arm. When I went to poke his face, however, he finally snapped. He grabbed the stick and broke it in half. That's enough. He shouted. Okay then. I said timidly, afraid of his sudden outburst. I backed away slowly, but he started to approach me. I retreated back until I hit a tree. Thane took this opportunity to trap me between his arms. I thought these things only happen in movies. I stuttered out because of his close proximity. He ignored my comment and said, You're really annoying, you know that. My mission was a success then, I said, staring into his beautiful eyes. Oh, so you were trying to get my attention, huh? He said, amused by my antics. There's a much differentiated meaning between seeking attention and annoying someone. I pointed out. Now there, darling, is where you're wrong. Why don't you just admit it? You feel something for me. He said with an arrogant smirk. You're right, I said, and his smirk widened. I strongly hate you. Now it was my turn to smirk. He let out an animalistic growl and bared his teeth at me. Now you really don't mean that now, do you? He stated more than asked. I'm not scared of you. I lied to him. Oh, you're not? He asked in a mocking tone. Maybe I should be, I thought. However, I wasn't about to admit that and instead said, No, I'm not. I was nearly killed by a beast, so a man with sharp teeth doesn't scare me. Well, you never know. I could more than be your beast. He raised his eyebrow at me. Yeah, no, I said seriously. Never in my lifetime can I imagine you as a beast. The thought itself amuses me really. However, I could imagine you as an animal, more of a raccoon of some sort, I replied with a grin. You should watch your mouth, sweetheart, you could be lying to yourself. He replied. 1. Don't call me that, and 2. The beast is a dog, not a man, so don't sell yourself short. I shot him a wink. He growled at me and said, So what if I said I was the beast? Oh, I'm so scared, hold me. I said with my voice laced in sarcasm. I'm not scared of you, Thane. Plus, didn't you say you wouldn't hurt me? I questioned. Haven't you heard? A promise is a fool's comfort. He repeated the exact line I said to him last night at the waterfall. So you're calling me a fool? I exasperated. He honestly looked demented and a tad scared. Wait, what? No. No. That's not what I meant. He rushed out. The entire situation was quite amusing. Deciding to play with his emotions, I faked cried, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you called me a fool." I sniffled as I covered my eyes with my hands. Through my fingers I could see the stupefied and panicked expression that Thane had. I luckily kept my laughter in as I saw that he moved his hands from the tree to my face. Swiftly I ducked beneath his hands and had enough space to escape. As I eluded his grasp, I turned back and shot him a smile. Must say he is one stupid guy because his face still held that confused expression. I could have practically tasted my freedom as the wind blew through my hair and I ran in a random direction in the woods. I was free, and that was all that mattered. Of course I was still confined in this illogical dress and my bare feet padded against the soil. My body was very exhausted, so I quickly became winded. I slowed my pace because I didn't hear any footsteps behind me, which means that I lost Thane. Mission successful. As I continued on my journey, I began hearing the impending footsteps I was unconsciously waiting to hear. I smiled because I was not going to find my way out here anytime soon and was glad that Thane caught up to me. However, it wasn't one set of footsteps I heard. Nor did it sound like a human's. It was loud, stamping steps that trudged through the forest and sounded closer and closer to me as the seconds ticked by. Now I really wished I hadn't ran. I stopped in my midst as I heard one of the footsteps behind me. I slowly turned around, scared beyond belief, as I faced the mysterious sound, and there it was. Facing me was the beast. No, not the beast, this one was different. This beast had brown fur and yellow eyes. The difference was uncanny, but it definitely was not the beast from the night before. It was a similar creature, however, but this one had a murderous look in its eyes. I couldn't get over that difference. Even though this creature was undeniably from the same gene as the beast, this one actually looked like it wanted to rip me to shreds. The feeling of it watching me was very unsettling. I heard a low but fierce growl escape its huge mouth as I saw the large, jagged and sharp canine teeth bared at me. The sight of those ferocious teeth had me squealing in fear. I slowly backed away from the creature, which I can only presume was a huge wolf. As I stepped back, I felt the jab of something pointy and slightly wet and cold on my back. When I turned around, it was yet again another dog, same color eye but different colored fur with the same murderous look. Its snout was what jabbed me in my back. I was trembling in fear as 3 more of the monsters appeared out of the surrounding woods. All 5 of them began circling me as if I was their prey. I had a trepidation that the varmints wanted anything but to be my friends. Wild and crazy thoughts flooded my head as I wondered if the actual beast sent his circle of mutts to get me back or finish his deadly job. I'm going to die. I was absolutely sure of it. Even if Thane did find me, there was nothing he could do to save me or himself. There wasn't a bone in my body to prepare me for what these uninhabited, primitive, and overgrown animals had in mind for me. I could have practically seen my life flash before my eyes. I let out an ear-piercing scream as the first monster lunged for my throat. I had my eyes shut tight, waiting for the painful impact, the kiss of death and the piercing, fiery torture as it ripped through me, but it never came. Instead, I heard a fierce, vehement, booming growl, and the next thing I know I was being hauled away from the scene before my eyes. More of the creatures appeared, easily outnumbering the 5 vicious ones. I watched as they tore each other apart, from limb to limb. I watched as the gruesome sight unfolded before me. Bloodshed splattered everywhere and decapitated bodies lay lifeless on the cold forest floor. The horrifying images before me were unforgettable, yet I could not look away. I was dragged further and further away from the unpleasant and depressing situation. I had no idea where I was going or who I was going with, but I allowed them to escort me away from the murder scene. When we were out of sight from the horrid creatures, the person that saved me pulled me into his arms. "Shh. You're safe now." He hushed me as he cradled me in his arms. It was then that I realized that I was still screaming my lungs out. No, no, no. It's still out there. The beast is still looking for me. I nearly shouted at him while tears stained my cheeks. "The beast isn't out to get you, Emery," he assured me. "No, you don't understand. Those things back there, those monstrous beasts nearly killed me. It was the same vile quadruped animal that took me that night. They looked at me with such murderous eyes," I said, shaking with fright in his arms as if he could protect me. I pushed out of his embrace and looked him dead in his eyes. "You didn't see those abominations. You didn't see the evil that just surrounded their being. It wanted to kill me, Thane," I told him. A strange expression then crossed his face, a look of sadness and resentment. I was baffled by his expression, but before I could say anything he pulled me back into the comfort of his hands. "Let's get back to the house." He sighed, but hurt was evident in his voice, and I had no idea why. I was utterly petrified by the experience and felt scared stiff as if my feet couldn't move. When Thane realized my plight, he hoisted me up bridal style and held me as if my weight was extinct. Astonishingly enough, Thane, a complete stranger, comforted me, and I didn't oppose. There was something about his scent that made me feel safe, made me feel this unwanted assurance that he would protect me from anything. I think I was gaining Stockholm Syndrome. In a matter of seconds I could clearly see the bright, electric blue of the evening sky shining down upon us and the green fern no longer in sight. "Are we out of the woods?" I quietly questioned him. "We sure are, sweetheart," he assured me. Those simple words made the tears stop flowing, and I felt as I could finally breathe again. He carried me towards the house, and I could suddenly hear the quiet whispering of others. I didn't know who they were, but as much as I wanted to escape and gain their aid, I needed answers first, and Thane just so happened to be the only person who can provide such vital information. I planned on getting the knowledge I seek about this creature, and then getting the hell out of this place, no matter what it takes. "This would be where you stay from now on," Thane said as I walked into the gargantuan bedroom. It was the same room I was in when I awoke after Thane had me knocked out. It was his. I knew it was from the spicy forest scent that evaded the entire space. I just stared at him. What happened out there wasn't normal. Those creatures weren't regular wolves, they were larger and fiercer, and they held this human nature to them. I knew that they came looking for me. He sent them. "The beast. There are fresh clothes in the closet through the door on your right, and to the left is the bathroom. I have some business to attend to. I will send someone up to keep you company," he told me as he looked at me wearily. "Would you be all right by yourself?" he asked as he approached me. Still shaken up, I automatically took a few steps backwards until the back of my knees hit the king-sized bed. "Yeah, I'm fine," I muttered with a hoarse throat. He looked guilty for leaving me alone as he turned back one more time to look at me before shutting the door behind him, leaving me in the unfamiliar room. When I heard his footsteps dwindle away from my hearing, I quickly started rummaging through the room for any sort of communication device that can help me get in contact with my family. I checked the nightstands, the cupboards, and the bookshelf, and even through the sofas. There was nothing. Not a phone or laptop in sight. I sat down on the bed and sighed. When did my life become this complicated? Looking around the room, I took inventory of everything. The room had a really rustic theme to it, and it felt like home. No. Snap out of it, Emery, this isn't your home. Besides the impressive fireplace, I looked at all the exits. That was most important at the moment. On the opposite side of the bed was the sofas, which was surrounded by large towering windows, and to the right of the bed was a pair of French doors that lead onto a balcony. I sauntered over towards the windows and opened it to see how high up I was. Looking through the window, I now realized why that was a bad idea. Besides being 3 floors high, I was immensely afraid of heights. "You're not planning on jumping, are you?" I was startled by the sudden questioning of a woman's voice that I nearly fell out the open window. "Holy shit, you scared the living daylights out of me," I said, exasperated as I threw my hands up in the air. I turned around to face a girl that looked about my age. She was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Southern belle. "Aw, did I scare you out of my pants?" she asked sarcastically. "More like made me crap myself." I muttered, but her hearing must be great because she laughed it off. Alpha didn't tell me you were a comedian, but I can tell we're going to get along very well, she told me. Who the hell is Alpha? I asked. I felt as if every minute I'm stuck here I get more confused. That stupid brute of an animal just had to kidnap me, but to be honest he's no better than the beast itself. Oh, she drawled out, you two didn't have the talk yet, did you? Her expression showed anxiousness as if she said something she wasn't supposed to. If by the talk you mean the birds and the bees talk, then yep, I know what it is, or at least enough to make me want to barf. I made a nauseous face to get my point across. Still don't understand why that have anything to do with my situation. She laughed and replied, that's what they all say, sweetie, and the next thing you know they're going at it like it's going out of style. I shook with laughter at her innuendos. I came to a realization that this girl could be of use to me in gaining my information, but I had to gain her trust first, as well as her name at that. I'm Emery, by the way. I offered my hand. Bailey. I think you met my boyfriend earlier, Lucas. She introduced herself and pointed out her other half. I was confused because I knew no Lucas. I think you're mistaken, I haven't met anyone by that name. I told her. No, I'm sure you ran into him earlier today, he's the bet. She cut herself off again, but I decided not to question it, yet, as she jogged my memory. Oh, that Lucas, yeah, I remembered. I said as I recall the guy I ran into when I tried to escape from Thane earlier. By the way, did Thane send you? I questioned. She nodded at me in reply. I was infuriated. I can't believe that he thinks of me as a simple-minded, half-witted fool that needs to be treated as a child. How much I do appreciate you trying to take care of me. I can take care of myself, Bailey. I smiled at her to show my genuine appreciation. I honestly couldn't believe this guy put up a girl to take care of his kidnapped victim. What an idiot. I'm sure he doesn't mean any ill wishes, Emery. He probably doesn't want you getting into trouble, running away, or jumping from a 3-story building. She giggled. Well, considering I'm in hell, I might as well take a shower. I shrugged. Bailey started dragging me towards the closet as she said, you're going to love your wardrobe. I snorted. I hardly doubt that any of the clothes in there probably would fit me. You'll be surprised. As she said that, she pulled open the double doors and left me speechless. This room just became more spectacular by the minute. The closet was grand. My family wasn't the type to afford such affluent things. I may have been blown away, but there was nothing I wanted more in the moment than my family. Bailey pulled me out of my daze and homesickness by tugging on my arm. On one side of the room held male clothing that I knew was Thane's, while on the other side was mostly empty. There were a few items of women clothing, but besides that it was all empty. Bailey must have seen me with a confused look as she explained what was before me. Those are Thane's clothing, as I'm sure you're well aware of, and these are yours. Thane had me pick out a few pieces for you, but he wasn't sure what are your likes and dislikes, so he said he will take you shopping soon. She pulled out the various clothing items and held it out for me to see what I wanted. I don't know if I should be flattered by his gesture or creeped out. I trailed off. He really cares for you, you know, Bailey suddenly said. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's kidnapper cares for them this much, I said, taking a pair of jeans from Bailey's hands. And would you look at that, he even got my size down correctly, because that's not peculiar at all, I said sarcastically. Just give him a chance, he may just surprise you, Bailey laughed. Then it struck me. You aren't. I mean, they aren't keeping you here against your will, are they? I anxiously asked her. They are, aren't they? You're kidnapped as well. Oh my gosh, and here I was feeling sorry for myself. We're going to get us out of here, I promise. She looked at me like I hit my head multiple times. I don't understand, I cut her off. You don't have to worry, I'm devising a plan to get us the hell out of here, I assured her. Do they have cameras in here? That's why you aren't able to tell me? Blink once for yes and twice for no if they have kidnapped you as well, I whispered to her, waiting for her reaction. I think you've got it all wrong, she started. I cut her off yet again. You are kidnapped? I whispered, exasperated, as she blinked once while she was talking. Then she began laughing uncontrollably. What? No, no. Emery, I wasn't kidnapped, and you weren't either, she continued laughing. Her answer made me felt like I was a part of some kind of sick, twisted joke that everyone knew the punchline to, except for me. I was the one left sitting here in the middle of the laughter. Are you sure you don't have Stockholm Syndrome? I mean, with all the preposterous crap I've heard since I've got here, I wouldn't blame you, I said. That fool-headed crap is a part of me, but don't worry, I'm sure you will be rid of all your contemplative questions soon, she said as she handed me a towel. I could tell that I offended her, but she looked like she dismissed it quickly. Great, now I was guilt-stricken. Bailey helped zip down my gown before I entered the yet impressive bathroom and took a long-needed shower. I took the picture of my family I kept and hid it in the cupboard below the sink where hopefully no one finds it. The soaps and shampoos filled my nostril with Thane's scent. His aura wrapped around me like a security blanket as the warm water washed over me. I let down my guard as I relaxed for the few minutes I could. I scrubbed my body clean of all the dirt that I trudged through in the forest. Sooner than I wanted, I walked out of the shower and wore a simple jeans and t-shirt. When I came out, Bailey was lounging on the sofa, mindlessly watching the television. Great, you're done, let's get you dinner. I'm sure Thane hasn't fed you yet, she said, shaking her head. I followed her out the door as she led the way in the mysterious house. This top floor belongs to Thane because he's like the boss man around here. Bailey tried to explain and I appreciated her effort, but I couldn't help wonder what she meant by Thane being the boss man. The floor has his bedroom and 2 guest rooms as well as a library, living room and kitchen. On the second floor are only bedrooms that belong to those that you must have seen around the house. That made sense because I wondered what all those people were doing in one house. And the first floor has some bedrooms, the main kitchen and pantry, a huge living room, the main dining room where everyone eats, Thane's office, and the infirmary. There's a backyard that has a beautiful garden and a huge yard. She explained the whole dynamic of the house. Where are we having dinner? I asked as I was wary about meeting all the unknown persons in the house. Don't worry, you don't have to meet everyone yet. She winked at me. I didn't like the way she said that because she implied that at some point I would eventually have to meet them, which unnerved me. Thane wanted you to be comfortable before you meet anyone else, so there's food in here, she said as we reached the kitchen. It was gorgeous just like the rest of the house. It was a pity I couldn't cook, or else I would have spent all my time in here. Is Thane joining us? I subconsciously asked. She knowingly smiled at me as she said, no. This left me a bit disappointed for whatever strange reason. She laughed at my disappointed expression before she said, don't worry, you will have him all to yourself from tonight onward. What she said scared me, but it also gave me butterflies in my stomach. I think I may be the one with the Stockholm Syndrome. I helped Bailey make sandwiches for the both of us. While we made some small talk, I learned that she was born and raised in this town. She and Lucas have been together almost 4 years. She had a sister named Abigail who was adopted, and her parents and her sister lived in their own house. Bailey was lovely, witty, friendly, and extravagant in her own way. If I wasn't planning on busting out of here soon, we would have become best of friends. In the middle of our dinner we heard footsteps coming up the flight of stairs, which turned out to be Thane. He saw us in the kitchen and quickly walked in the direction of the bedroom without sparing us a second glance. My chest constricted at the way he acted, but I dismissed the feeling. Well, I better get going. I will see you tomorrow morning, Bailey said, and she waved goodbye and left me alone. After a few minutes of solitude, Thane appeared freshly clothed and bathed. Hey, he said, taking a seat on the stool next to me. Hey stranger, I said, and he chuckled. Are you full? Do you need anything else to eat? He asked as he went to the fridge. No, I'm fine, I replied. I see you and Bailey have started bonding, he commented. Well, considering you sent her to babysit me, then yeah, I suppose we did. I looked at him and he held a guilty expression. I'm really sorry about that, Emery, but I truly sent her to keep you company. I thought you two would become great friend." He earnestly said to me, "Well, if I wasn't leaving here soon, I'm sure we might have been." I shrugged. He slammed his fist on the countertop in front of me as he said, "You're not leaving here. Whatever floats your boat, buddy," I said to hide my sudden fear of his reaction. I got up from the stool and walked away towards the bedroom. I could tell he was following me by the footsteps I heard behind me. When I entered the bedroom, I could see it was approaching night as the sun began to set. It was way earlier than my normal bedtime, but I was exhausted from all the dreary questions weighing in my head. As I moved the comforter on the bed to settle in, I could still sense Thane's presence behind me. "If you think you're sleeping in here with me, I would castrate you." I faced him and held my stance. Of course I was scared of being alone with a stranger in a bedroom, who knew what this guy wanted from me. But I was going to fight till the end. Though something inside me told me Thane was the last person on earth to hurt me, but what did I know? It was a war between conscience and brain. He laughed and replied, "Sweetheart, this is our room. Ours, meaning yours, and mine, together." He slowly explained to me as if I was a child. "I understand what you're saying, Thane, I'm not a child," I said, offended. "I didn't mean it like that," he quickly said. "Then how did you?" I asked. "You can take the room because I don't want it, you ass." I pushed past him and walked all the way to the first floor. There was no one around as they must all be having dinner. I spotted the huge doors that was the main entrance and exited. I wasn't going to run yet as Thane was only a few feet behind me, and when I plan on running, no one should be aware. I went to the edge of the forest and got comfy between the blades of grass and soil. I leaned against the tree trunk and watched Thane approach me in the twilight of the night. "You know, if you liked my ass that much you should have just said so." He gave me sass. "I've seen better, sorry to disappoint," I threw attitude. He was clearly bothered by what I said. "So you're sleeping out here then, are you?" He changed the subject. "Yeah, it's way nicer than you are. Quieter for one, and with a lower criminal record," I said, testing his patience. "Fine, you want to sleep out here? Then by all means go right ahead, sweetheart." He angrily turned on his heels and went to the house, and he left. Terrified. The great alpha of the Blood Moon pack was terrified. Never in my life have I felt like this. Like a wuss, if I was being honest. She terrified the shit out of me and yet made me feel so powerful all at once. The tales I grew up hearing of what a mate's bond felt like had no comparison to what I felt when I first saw her, Emery. The name of my beautiful mate sent a sweet chill down my spine. My emotions were all over the place when I was around her. I was scared, in love, confused and filled with desire. She was different. She defied me and threw curses and tantrums my way, but that's what made her special. I mean, she annoyed the life out of me, but in the most precious way. No matter how anyone described the bond of a mate, it was profound experiencing it for myself. It was indescribable, it was powerful. It was this moment that I realized the saying was true: love made a person do stupid things, and a fool I was. Instead of revealing to her what and who I am, I chickened out. She looked so vulnerable and tortured, that I couldn't have told her the vital information she wanted. My father, grandfather, and each other great-grand before me, each told their mate who they were a few hours after the ritual. But me? No. Nope. I couldn't do it, and I still can't. The moment I knew Emery was my mate, I knew I couldn't let her go. And leaving will be the first thing she does when she finds out what I am. I was the beast that haunted her in her the night. The vile creature that overtook her dreams and filled her mind with nightmares. I was the demon that she hated with a blazing passion. It didn't help that she hated the human side of me as well. The adoration and impetuous love I felt for this girl had me on my toes. The hatred she expressed to me about the beast is what made me petrified of telling her. How can you tell someone you feel this gleaming emotion for that you're the crazy beast that gives her goosebumps in the night? I fear that I'm not doing the right thing by not telling her right now. I feel guilty each time I look at her lost eyes. My chest hurts knowing that she feels like an outlander in my home. Most of all, I'm petrified of losing her. What I feel most guilty for is what happened to her not hours ago. The attack from the Rouges. Those were the real monsters. Those iniquitous, so-called wolves were the creatures she should fear. They defied everything that stood for wolves. Wolves are majestic, loyal creatures, and Rouges were those that held no importance for rules and regulations. With that being said, there are wolves who were made rouge because of attacks, wars, and incompetent alphas, but the majority were runaways that didn't see fit following rules and staying in packs. Those were the creatures that almost took Emery away from me in a blink of an eye. I let her wander out there, give her a few moments to herself, and the rogues just had to attack. I had my pack devour them into shreds of nothingness. All that was left was wolves' fur and flesh lying on the forested floor, but I had them inmate one. I couldn't kill him in front of Emery's eyes because she would come to know what I am. The rouge that tried to lunge for my mate is the one whose blood I craved. After ensuring Emery was safe and had someone to watch over her, I left to complete my job. I left Bailey, my beta Lucas's mate, keep my mate company. Lucas is my beta as well as my best friend. We grew up together since our days in diapers and playing with rattles. I demolished the beast that dared to lay his fitly paws on my mate. After the gruesome scene, I avoided Emery to change my clothing because it was splattered with blood. She acted very distant and cold with me, and I wondered if Bailey told her anything about our kind. Then I remembered that Emery naturally hated my guts. I watched as she moved the comforter on the bed to settle in. "If you think you're sleeping in here with me, I would castrate you." She turned to face me. She really could emasculate a man. Her eyes had a glimmer of fear in them, and I could tell what she was thinking, but I could never hurt her. Not physically or emotionally, it would cause me pain as well. I laughed and replied, "Sweetheart, this is our room. Ours, meaning yours and mine, together." I slowly explained to get my point across. "I understand what you're saying, Thane, I'm not a child," she said, offended. I quickly rejected that before she thought of me differently. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you?" she asked. "You can take the room because I don't want it, you ass." She pushed past me as she walked to the first floor. I was a few steps behind her, giving her some space to get her anger out, but not enough to lose visual on her. Everyone was having dinner in the dining room, so she walked carefree out of the front door. When I went outside, she was sitting under a tree looking as if she was trying to get comfortable enough to sleep. I approached her. "You know, if you liked my ass that much, you should have just said so." She tried to make me jealous by saying, "I've seen better, sorry to disappoint." I was obviously bothered by what she said. "So you're sleeping out here then, are you?" I decided to change the subject. "Yeah, it's way nicer than you are. Quieter for one, and with a lower criminal record," she said, testing my patience. Of course she thought I was a criminal. She believed I was a kidnapper. "This girl is going to be the death of me, I swear." "Fine, you want to sleep out here? Then by all means go right ahead, sweetheart." I angrily turned around and went to the house. I kept my eyes glued to her from the window. I had border patrol around the territory tight tonight after the attack, and I sent a few pack members a few feet into the woods behind Emery so she wouldn't notice. If she wanted a fight, that's exactly what she was going to get, but I had to ensure her safety above all else. Those darn mosquitoes. Every minute I drew closer to sleep, I had a new itching spot. Being this close to the forest, I could hear every croak, creak and flutter of the hundreds of insects crawling about in the blood-curdling darkness beyond the trees and into the unnerving forest. It wasn't the bugs, arachnids, arthropods, the chilly night air, the pessimistic itching, or even the hard soil and tree bark I lay against that I was afraid of. It was the lurking creatures that may be trudging through the forest behind me. I may have insulted Thane and left the house willingly, but I didn't expect the guy to just leave me out here, alone, in the dark. Note to self, don't let pride get in the way of my sleep. I sat out here for so long that the cool night air turned into a frosty midnight. My kidnapper didn't even have an ounce of chivalry to get me a blanket. I guess the saying was true, chivalry fell on its sword. I felt as if the frost bites were giving me hypothermia. No matter how much bloodsuckers bit me or how much I froze my ass off, nothing stopped a girl from sleeping. It must have been way after midnight when I finally fell into a deep slumber. The last thing I remembered was hearing a low growl near me, then the sensation of someone lifting me up. I jolted awake by the itching in my nose and the feeling to sneeze. Rattled by the softness I was laying on, I sat up. I seem to be confused each time I'm in this room. I had a feeling Thane doesn't take no for an answer as I laid here on his bed. I felt a fever on my skin and my crazy sneezing acting up again. I looked upon the nightstand for some tissues and I couldn't believe what my eyes landed upon. Sitting primed, proper and framed on the bedside table was the picture of my family. Thane must have found it last night and framed it for me. Grabbing the picture frame and looking down at their smiling faces, I was washed over with the feeling of nostalgia and homesickness. The fond memories and sentiment this piece of paper held brought tears to my eyes. That didn't help because my nose just became stuffy. I placed the picture frame back as I got off the bed. As I placed both feet on the ground and took a step forward, my foot caught on something. More like someone. I went tumbling forward as I heard a loud yelp of pain. I screamed as I landed on my right side, on the floor with a loud thump. That's going to leave a bruise, I thought as I felt my side light up in pain. Emery. Are you okay? Thane quickly scooted towards me to check for casualties. I looked up into his eyes and saw worry as clear as day written all over his face. But of course I had to scream at him. What the hell were you doing there? I yelled at him. Are you trying to kill me or get yourself killed? Hey, I'm sorry. He honestly said to me. I didn't think you'd have woken up so early. You really gave me a good kick there though. He smiled. For some unknown reason I couldn't help but laugh at that. I must be mentally unstable. Aw, I yelled in pain as my side hurt when I laughed. Are you alright? But before I could answer, he continued. Come on, let's get you off the floor. Thane rose from the ground where he proceeded to lift me by holding my sides. Bad idea. I puffed out before I held my right side to somehow ease the pain. And of course I caught the cold from staying outside, so sneezing really didn't help my predicament. Thane looked a bit scared, which confused me. Maybe he didn't want his victim getting hurt by anything except him, but he was a strange man indeed. He kidnapped me, promised not to hurt me and acts very kind and sweet. I mean, the dude even framed the picture of my family. But one thing that television taught me was that serial killers always had a charm to them. Thane was practically the poster boy for charismatic, polite, affectionate and cordial. It was practically a true crime story waiting to happen. He bent towards me and gently said, I'm going to lift you from under your arms. Please try not to make any sudden movements to do any further damage to yourself. I knew he was right, so I let him do what he had to while biting on my tongue to hold my screams of pain. To be fair, it is your fault I'm like this, I said to him. He chuckled and replied, you're the one that tripped on me, you do know that, don't you? Well, you're the one that was creeping in my room, I said with clear pain in my voice as he gently laid me back on the pillows. Don't forget you're in my room, sweetheart. He winked at me suggestively. You know you're a real jerk, I said to him. I wear it with pride. How egotistical. He smiled and touched my forehead. You're hot. I snorted. I know I am. I arrogantly said. I meant you're burning up with a fever. He chuckled. I blushed a deep red. Oh, though your temper is quite heated. He smirked as he embarrassed me further. And you're egotistical, you may want to try a bit of humility to solve that problem, I shot back. Should I get the doctor here, or could you make it to the first floor? He tried changing the topic. I chastised him. Oh dear, did I hurt your pride and dented your ego? I rhetorically asked. He gave me a serious expression before he looked into my eyes and chuckled. Okay, I will give you that one, but only because you need a doctor. Sure, I said knowingly. And I can walk, come on, he said as he maneuvers himself to prop most of my weight as we got off the bed. He had one of my arm draped around his neck as he held me around my waist. We probably made it to the door when the pain became unbearable. I can't go any further. I managed to get out as I rested all my weight on him and clutched my side. He looked down at me with a serious expression. You wouldn't bite, kick, or punch me if I lift you, would you? I make no promises, I breathed out as he gently scooped me into his arms bridal style. This position was becoming a little too familiar for us. Did I hurt you? He panicked. I continued to hold my side as I shook my head, no at him. Being this close to him as he carried me to the doctor eased my pain. I don't know how or why, but in some way, I felt a little better and the pain subsided. The situation I was in was strange, but Thane was stranger. He made me feel safe and somehow content and relaxed. Though I might never admit this to him, but I had unconsciously placed a certain trust in him. Even though he kidnapped me, I know that if he wanted to hurt me, he would have done it by now. He's protective of me and I don't know why. I still don't completely put my life in his hands and I still want to get back home as soon as possible, but as of right now, Thane knew things I didn't, and I had to get answers. All I can hope for is that curiosity doesn't kill the cat. How did you even get hurt this bad? Thane asked as he slowly walked down the stairs, too afraid to hurt me. I gave him a, "You're kidding me" face. Are you serious? You tripped me, I accused. I didn't trip you, you tripped on me. Same difference. I rolled my eyes. You're pretty fragile, and clumsy, he concluded. I faked smiled. Thanks, I get that a lot. Who else told you that? I could see that he was trying to contain his anger. Told you, overprotective. You and let me see, you. I clarified. Really, I was almost certain everyone told you that, he said with a smirk. He played it off as his anger left him, but I could tell something else was bothering him. I was about to ask him, but I was interrupted by all the staring aimed at us. Thane must have noticed my uncomfortable situation. Don't mind them, they're just curious about you, he said. Who are they? They are all a part of the pack, he replied as if I knew what the pack was. What's the pack? I asked, confused. They're my family. Does your family know you kidnapped me? I asked solemnly. Are you ever going to drop that? He answered my question with a question. Are you ever going to answer that? I countered. He went silent and I could feel his entire spirit drop. That feeling unnerved me, so I continued the conversation. Why is your family curious about me? I asked. Because you're with me, he stated. That doesn't even make sense. So much for an explanation. It doesn't have to, sweetheart. I gave him a look when he called me that. What? He asked, smiling. I told you not to call me that. No, you said to never call you babe. I'm pretty sure I just called you sweetheart, he said, matter of fact. I glared at him. Okay, how about you don't call me any form of endearments? You can call me Emery. No, I think I'll stick with sweetheart. Emery is such a mouthful. He winked. You know, if there was ever a record for most annoying and stubborn person, you would be the record holder. I smiled. Touché, he said as we walked into a large room on the first floor. The room was white and filled with about a dozen or more beds, 3 of which are occupied. It smelt like the hospital which I was accustomed to. It brought back horrible memories of my sister's sickness and reminded me of my goals in life. Because of those unmentionable memories, I decided to become a doctor, but as long as I was stuck here, I couldn't chase that dream. Are you all right? Thane asked as he saw the uneasy expression on my face. Yeah, just please put me down, I asked. As Thane gently placed me to sit on the bed and left to get the doctor, I could feel the pain completely disappear as I removed my hand from the area. That was strange. I tried turning, and even though there was a slight pain, I could have completely moved unlike before. "You're the new Luna, aren't you?" someone to my right asked. I turned to see one of the 3 patients in here awake and looking at me. It was a boy, he looked about 20. "I don't know what you're talking about," I told him. "Luna." I kept hearing that word everywhere, and yet I had no idea what it meant and why everyone thought I was it. I was clearly not the moon. He looked a bit confused till something dawned on him. "He hasn't told you yet," he mumbled. "But you are the girl from the ritual, aren't you?" "Is that what I'm known as around here?" "The girl from the ritual?" I embarrassingly asked. "No, don't worry about it. However, you may not know this, but you are the most respected person here." His eyes told me he was being honest. "Respected? I don't know anyone here. I'm Emery, by the way," I offered. "I'm Hayden." "Don't worry, you have the rest of your life to know everyone." He smiled at me. Trying to distract myself from him, saying I have all my life, as if I'm staying here forever, I changed the subject. "So, what are you in here for?" I asked. "I was attacked by a rog, something in the forest," he said. "What was it?" I asked curiously. He just shrugged and mumbled, "A bear," but I wasn't so convinced. "How did it happen?" I asked instead. "I was just trying to collect some pieces of wood and it attacked me," he said, and I could tell he didn't want to talk about it. I heard footsteps coming back and saw Thane and the doctor return. I gave Hayden a smile before returning my attention back to Thane. He clearly saw my interaction with Hayden and held a pissed-off look but said nothing. "Miss Aiken, I'm Dr. Adler." Dr. Adler looked like he was in his early 50s. "You can call me Emery," I said as I shook his hand. "Yes, well, Miss Aiken." He chose to keep calling me by my last name. "Thane said you were getting a pain in your side. What happened?" he asked. "Well, you see, she tripped and fell." Thane interrupted me, and I gave him a death glare. "And which side did you fall on?" the doctor asked. "The right side, but when I came in here the pain was barely there," I informed him. "Okay, I'm going to ask you to lie down so I can check your side. Is that all right?" Even though I knew he was asking me, I could tell his question was aimed at Thane. I found myself looking at Thane for an answer, which was odd, but as he gave a curt nod I found myself saying yes to the doctor. As the doctor examined my side I looked at Thane, who had a worried expression as he looked at the doctor. He must have felt my gaze on him, as he turned to look at me. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I was caught in his eyes. The doctor brought us out of our staring contest as he said, "I'm going to gently press and you say if it hurts." I nodded my head and Thane gave me a small smile as he took my hand in his for support. As he started to gently press my side, I didn't say anything, but when he applied more pressure I whimpered in pain. "That hurts." I managed to get out. I heard Thane growl and gave him a perplexed expression but squeezed his hand in assurance. The doctor nodded. "From what I could tell there isn't any internal damage and the only physical problem is the bruise, which does indicate that you should be in more pain. From the immense pain Thane described you were in, there isn't any damage. It seems as though you miraculously healed pretty quickly." I was puzzled because I was never the one to heal fast. I always took longer than an average person. For instance, I once got a paper cut that took weeks to heal and it wasn't even that deep. "Are you sure, Doc?" "As a pre-med student, I'm pretty sure no one heals that quickly," I said, flustered. The doctor gave Thane a knowing look before he answered me. "Cases like these are pretty common. I'm sure you weren't extremely hurt to begin with." Again I was shocked. I was in no place to question him because I only just began studying medicine. But did this guy even have his medical license? "I will get you some analgesic gel for the bruise. She's also running a fever and had the cold," Thane informed him. "She doesn't seem to be over body temperature, but I will get her something for the cold." I sat up as the doctor walked away and Thane still held my hand. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Well, the pain is pretty much gone. I told him as he checked my temperature. He was right, you no longer have the fever, Thane said. Just out of curiosity, he does have his MD, right? I quietly asked. Thane laughed at my expression but replied, yes, he is the most qualified person here, he guaranteed. Soon enough, Doctor. Adler returned with my medication and analgesic gel, which he applied to the bruise to ease the slight pain. When we walked out of the infirmary, Thane was still holding my hand, but with the continuous curious glances set on us from his family, I felt as if a lightning bolt of realization struck me as I dropped his hand like if it was on fire. I heard a low growl rumble inside of him as he walked ahead of me into the kitchen. I knew he was still riled up about me talking to Hayden, and I just made things worse as he stormed through the halls. To some it may seem like he was a tad jealous, but to be honest, he was starting to agitate me because I know he wasn't. What reason would he have to be jealous? When we walked into the kitchen, I had to try to stop myself from laughing. There, standing right in front of us, was Bailey and Lucas in the middle of a heated makeout session. Get a room, I shouted at them. They sprung away from each other faster than I could blink as Thane and I began laughing at their obvious embarrassment. Alpha, Luna, they greeted. There, that word goes again, Luna. I didn't see any moon around the room. And about Alpha, what was that about? Thane and Lucas were having an intense staring competition, which was the definition of awkward. It was as if they having some sort of silent conversation, which I knew was impossible. Hey, I said as I approached Bailey. Morning, sweetie. Want some pancakes? She said, avoiding eye contact with me since she was a bit embarrassed from being caught with Lucas. No thanks. So, you two were getting it on in the kitchen, huh? I said, laughing at her dilemma. Emery. Hush. She shushed me as she motioned to the guys who were right next to us. I want all the details later, okay? I said, making her promise. You're never going to let this go, are you? She more stated than asked. I loved how she just knew me without knowing me. Got that right. I winked at her as I moved around the kitchen looking for some cereal. I felt a presence behind me as I tried to reach the cereal box on the high shelves after I heard Lucas and Bailey left. You should be resting, Thane said as I felt his hands on my waist as he moved me to the side. I quietly went and sat on the stool as I knew he was already in a bad mood. Was he ever in a good mood? He brought my cereal to me, grabbed a high stack of pancakes for himself and sat down casually next to me as silence engulfed us. The only sound that could be heard was the crunching of my cereal and the sound of him chewing as we awkwardly ate in silence. So what's the plan for the day? I asked just to break the deafening silence. We're going shopping, he answered in a monotone. Shopping? I painfully asked. Are you okay? He asked worriedly. I hate shopping, I exasperated. But you're a girl, he stated. That's so sexist. I slapped his arm. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that, he earnestly said to me. So, are you ever going to talk to me? Am I not talking to you now? You know what I mean, I said. Actually, I don't. You're jealous, I said to him, smiling. No, I'm not, he denied. Deny it all you want, I know better. What would I be jealous of? He stared at me. I glared at him. Well, I guess if you aren't, I will just go back to the infirmary. Did I tell you, I made a new friend, his name is Hay, don't you dare say his name. He cut me off as he grabbed my hand before I could move away. So you are jealous? I smirked. Of course I am. You're mine and no one else's, he declared. Okay, I know you are this super protective and definitely dominant male, but I'm not yours, buddy, I said, patting his arm. I beg to differ. I'm not your property. You do not own me. I own myself and I'm not going to defy my morals and self-worth to appease you. I don't know who you are or what you want from me, but just remember that you don't own me. I said, leaving him speechless as I walked out from the kitchen. I had a plan in my mind. It was time for me to leave. After getting ready to go shopping, I still didn't have it in me to go with him. I couldn't even say his name. How dare he just command me and mark his territory when I'm not his? He doesn't own me. I'm just his victim. I don't even know why I have to go shopping with him. It wasn't like I was actually staying here all my life. Yes, there were only about 3 suits of clothing in the closet and I was wearing the second pair, but it was a pair too much because I wasn't staying here long enough to wear the third. As much as I opposed the idea of shopping, doing it with my kidnapper was a whole other level of insanity and completely outlandish in my books. I never really understood the perks and enjoyment one gets while spending an entire day walking around in crowded stores, doing nothing more than spending all their money and liquidating their bank accounts on nothing more than material things that might not even last a year. You can call me cheap, but I prefer the term thrifty. It had a better ring to it. But considering that I didn't exactly walk with cash whilst being kidnapped, I guess Thane was paying. At least that was a plus. This trip seemed to be becoming more appeasing as I thought about it because it did open an opportunity for me. I just had to play my cards right and hopefully I will be within the confines of my home by tonight. Things seemed to be in my odds as I stepped out of the bedroom and walked towards the living room, of the top floor, and saw Thane. He looked dejected, like he was about to beg for my forgiveness from the look on his face. I felt like jumping for joy, but in all honesty I felt like comforting him. Note to self, check into the mental institute when I get home. As soon as I stepped into the room he looked up at me with those puppy dog eyes, those beautiful brown eyes. They looked like a sea of chocolate and I was definitely drowning in it. I mentally slapped myself to snap out of this trance state I fell into. Emery. Thane whispered. I simply gave him the silent treatment in return. I walked to the kitchen fully aware that he was following me. Time to implement step 1. I grabbed a glass of water as he stood on the opposite side of the counter. Emery, I know what I said was inexcusable and unwarranted, but you have to believe me when I say I'm sorry. Can you please just look at me? He gently asked. I know he wanted to try those darn puppy dog's eyes that makes me melt inside, but I didn't want him to know that was my kryptonite. I reluctantly turned around and saw a glimmer of a smile appear on him but disappeared just as quickly as it came as his entire facial features held torment. I constantly sipped my water and looked into my glass, so I wouldn't be trapped in those chocolate sea-he-called eyes. The heat of the moment got to my head, and I said things I wish I could take back. I know I don't own you, Emery, and that's the last thing I meant to say. Hurting you is the last thing on my agenda and I didn't mean to do it. I know it's selfish of me to ask this, but please forgive me, please? The look in his eyes, the sincerity he displayed and my stupid heart all wanted me to forgive him, and I would have, but my brain overpowered all that with common sense. I continued to not speak to him, and when he saw I was in no rush to answer, he continued. Tell me what to do to make it better. Tell me what to do to make it hurt less. Tell me what I can do to earn your trust, your forgiveness. He looked broken. Let me go alone. I mumbled. He looked taken aback that I actually spoke to him. Sorry, I didn't hear you. He said, you said what you can do to earn my trust. Well, for that to happen you can let me go shopping alone. I need some time, at least a few hours of solitude so I can be able to think for myself and get a breath of fresh air. I declared, looking at him. No, absolutely not. He finalized. Yay, I thought that was pretty far-fetched. That's why I had a backup plan. At least let me go alone with Bailey. I tried. She can come, but I am going with you. He stated. Weren't you the one saying how you thought her and I would be great friends? And to be honest, she is my only friend in this place. Plus I need a girl's advice on what to buy, not a guy's. And you want my trust, so let me go or I may never forgive you. I threatened. He contemplates this for a moment as I pray that he agrees. He finally opened his mouth to speak and I held my expectations very high. Okay, fine, you can go with Bailey. I smiled brightly as I cut him off and said, yay. Wait, you didn't let me finish. There isn't anything else for you to say. I answered. He gave me a pointed glare but went on. I will be driving you there and picking you up. I wanted to detest, but I knew that was the best offer I would get, and by the looks of things, he wasn't going to change his mind. Fine, I mumbled. I'm going to take a quick shower. Why don't you go find Bailey? She should be in the kitchen. Thane told me as he walked to the bedroom. I skipped down the stairs happy, as everything in my plan was going smoothly, so far at least. When I entered the kitchen, I immediately spotted Bailey as she was taking out a pie from the oven, and I was consumed with the delicious aroma. There were about 4 other women in there. 2 looked a year or 2 older than me, while the other 2 were much older, probably mid-40s at least. What smells so good? I asked as I walked towards Bailey. Hey Emery. She greeted me with a smile as I approached her. Hey, I said, looking at the mouth-watering pie. Want a piece? She asked, looking at me practically drooling. I nodded my head in gusto as she immediately grabbed a plate and sliced a piece of cherry pie for me, my favorite. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I hurried her as she laughed at my excitement. As I was about to put a beautiful piece of pie to my lips, Bailey stopped me. It's hot, you may want to wait, she warned. I dismissively waved her off with my fork as I shoveled a generous amount of pie into my mouth. Let's just say that wasn't exactly the best idea. Hot, I said with my mouth filled with pie. Bailey had an I told you so smile as she handed me a glass of milk. I'm not sure if to tell you I was right or give you the life lesson of patience is a virtue, I teased her when my mouth finally extinguished from the inferno. It was then that I remembered there were others in the kitchen as well. Bailey must have noticed me shifting in my seat uncomfortably as she spoke up. Let me introduce to you to everyone. This is my mom, Kate. She and Mrs. Grant here are 2 of the many persons that usually cooks for the pack. She told me as both Bailey's mom and the other woman gave me a pleasant smile before going back to their chatting and working. Over here is my sister Abigail that I was telling you about, and her friend Layla. Bailey concluded. Abigail, Bailey's adopted sister, and her friend gave me a fake smile, but Abigail was shooting daggers at me. She made me feel as if I ran over her cat. And everyone, this is Emery, our new Luna. Bailey introduced me. I started getting accustomed to the term Luna, yet I still had no idea what it meant. What if it meant some bad word, or what if it meant mistress and everyone thought I was Thane's lady? That got me a little paranoid, but when Bailey declared me as such, both the older women looked at me with such respect, pride, and hope that all my worries blew out the door. They didn't even know me yet they looked at me like I was some goddess or leader to them. I guess Luna wasn't such a bad word after all. Abigail still looked at me with such disdain, but I guess that was just her natural look. Not everyone was perfect. Her friend did bow her head a little at my presence, but that was it. She was also throwing nasty looks my way. Bailey saw my predicament with her sister and quietly whispered, "Don't take them too seriously, they're just jealous." She winked at me, but I had no idea why they would be jealous of me. Maybe they also wanted to be kidnapped. It was beyond me, but I knew I landed in crazy town the moment I woke up in this house. So what's up? Bailey asked as she took a seat next to me on the bar stools. That reminded me why I came down here in the first place. I was wondering if you would go shopping with me. I thought Thane was taking you, she asked, and as soon as Thane's name popped up in the question, I saw Abigail direct her attention to our conversation. He was, but I need a girl's help with shopping, not Thane's. I said. Please, come with me, I begged as I gave her my best puppy dog eyes. Let me think about it. She went silent for a few seconds, and I became worried that step 2 of my plan was faltering. Yes, of course I will go with you. I need a few things myself, she said excitedly, and I sighed in relief. Step 2 completed. I could tell from her excitement that she was going to make me shop till I drop, literally. Bailey was already dressed, so we continued chatting as I ate my cherry pie. I suddenly felt a hand go around my shoulder, and I immediately knew it was Thane from the sparks I felt from the touch and his amazing scent. I tensed from the sudden contact, but I surprisingly relaxed a bit under his arm. "You girls ready?" he asked us. I was about to answer, but a little rat butted into our conversation. "Thane, hey, how are you?" Abigail walked up to us and placed her measly hand on his arm that wasn't around my shoulder. I didn't know why I was so furious, but I was raging at her hands on him. I looked up at him to see his reaction to her, but surprisingly enough he wasn't looking at her, he was looking at me. "I'm fine," he simply answered, not bothered by her. He kept looking at me in a searching gaze as if he was trying to figure out if I had forgiven him or not, or maybe he figured out my plan. I turned my face away before my eyes revealed something that led to my escape plan. "So I haven't seen you around much, like before," she said in a seductive way, cutting me out of my thoughts. Was this girl blind or a half-wit? Thane wasn't even giving her 2 seconds of his time. He wasn't even looking at her. "I've been with my girl." He shrugged. "Hold up, did he just say my girl?" I nearly died, and not because I was swooning over him. "Well, I cut her off before she could finish her sentence. "We're ready," I announced as I suddenly stood up and moved in between Thane and Abigail to get her slimy hands off him. I grabbed Bailey's hand on my way out and led her towards the front door. I don't know what took over me, but I felt this strange feeling of anger towards Abigail. I didn't even know her, so why do I feel this resentment towards her? And so what if she liked Thane? It wasn't as if I was interested in him. Abigail continued to talk to Thane, but I couldn't stand her, so I continued walking. Not long after, maybe less than a minute, Thane met us outside, keys in hand. He had a worried expression on his face as he approached us. "You know, if you wanted more time to flirt with her, we would be more than willing to go by ourselves," I said to him. "Isn't that right, Bailey?" When I looked at Bailey, she looked like a deer caught in the highlights and quickly avoided our gaze as she took more interest in the trees surrounding us. "Don't drag me in your little squabble," she quietly mumbled. "Emery," I cut him off. "No, by all means, if you want to go get some, go right ahead. I mean, after all, I'm just your kidnapped victim." I shrugged, turning my gaze away from him, so he wouldn't see how much it actually affected me. I felt tears pricking the rim of my eyes, and I fought with my conscience that I was just being silly and I didn't actually care about him. I had to keep my emotions in check to play out my mission at hand. Thane suddenly grabbed me by my shoulder and gently turned my chin so I was facing him. "Listen to me," I opened my mouth to testify, but he cut me off. "No, I don't want to hear it. It's your turn to listen to what I have to say. She and I aren't together. I never liked her, and I never will. There is only one girl I have my eyes on. One girl that stands out to me, and one girl I truly care for. One girl that already stole my heart and may not know it yet." He beautifully concluded, but it shattered me. I keep telling myself I don't like him, but I don't even know anymore. My mind is saying one thing and my heart is saying another. They were constantly at war since I met Thane. "So why don't you go for her instead of annoying me all day?" I asked, surprisingly keeping my voice from shaking and cracking. "Because she's right in front of me," he stated. I looked up at him to see him staring directly at me with his eyes displaying nothing but honesty. I wondered for a brief second who he was talking about as I looked around for the girl he so lovingly described, but when I saw no one there I reluctantly turned back to meet his humored expression set on me. I was shocked as I came to the realization that he was talking about me. Taking my silence in a wrong way, he quickly stated, "I'm sorry. I know I'm overstepping my boundary. I shouldn't have said that." I was about to tell him no and testify he was wrong, but before I could respond, Bailey quickly appeared out of nowhere and thankfully saved me from my inner turmoil. "You guys ready? We're not getting any younger," she said, walking towards what I suppose was the garage. "Come on," Thane said, taking my hand in his as we walked to the vehicles. Once the garage door opened, I was dumbstruck. There were a lot of vehicles. A few vans, a couple bikes, a Jeep, and a Mustang which I desperately wanted to test drive. I was in awe. "Color me impressed, Thane." Thane led us to the Jeep, which was surprising because I took him for more of a race car type of guy. "This is one of my babies," he said to me in a proud stance. "Can I drive?" I asked hopefully. He looked at me for a few seconds before responding, "Another day, I promise, when I'm sure you can drive." I gave him a disbelieving look as I grumbled under my breath, "I'm sure I can drive way better than you." He somehow heard what I said and chuckled as he opened the passenger door for me. I must admit, I never met anyone who did the simplest thing of opening my door. Once I got in and he closed my door, I threw Bailey a thankful gaze for saving me just moments before as Thane started the engine. Step 3 was completed as we drove away from the crowded and trapping house. I must admit the Jeep drove smoothly and the rumble of the engine was a hum with no sound of any weird clanging, and I could tell he took extra care of his vehicle. "How long will you all be?" Thane asked, breaking the silence that engulfed us. I narrowed my eyes at him, knowing exactly why he asked. "You aren't planning on waiting in the car park for us, are you?" His guilty expression answered my question before he did. "What? No way." He lied in an off tone. So you weren't planning on be the overbearing and overprotective person that you are?" I asked, leaning closer to his face to pressure him into telling me the truth. He turned his head briefly to look at me, and I then realized how close we were, a few inches to be exact. If he decided to move his head any closer, we might as well be kissing. I promptly moved back from the close proximity, eyes on the road. I yelled at him. He wiggled his eyebrows at me suggestively before returning his gaze to the road. But strangely enough, there wasn't another vehicle in sight on the road. "Aw. You two are so cute together, totally meant to be," Bailey said in an adoring tone. Thane just chuckled at her sudden outburst while the tips of my ears turned red. Thane kept sneaking quick glances at me until he finally answered my pending question. "I was actually planning on waiting in the parking area," he shamefully answered. "Aha, I knew it," I called out. All right, you got me, but I'm still waiting on you too." This made my blood from my face drain. If he stayed, even if he wasn't with us, I had no chances of escaping. "What? No, you can't," I said a bit too briskly. He narrowed his gaze at me. "And why not?" he asked in suspicion. I racked my brain for a viable explanation so he doesn't see through my lies. "Well, for starters, you promised you were going to give me some space, and I am," he confirmed. "Waiting in the same area as us isn't exactly what I call giving me space." I gave him a pointed look. "Plus, don't you have work or something to do? You can't possibly tell me you don't have a job." He warily took my words into consideration, giving it a lot of thought, before he finally, but hesitantly agreed, "Fine, but I will call Bailey's phone to check up on you." Knowing that was my only option, I accepted his offer. "Okay," I grumbled. The rest of the car ride was quiet, and when we finally reached the shopping area, I could practically taste freedom. Bailey got out and I was following suit until Thane gently grabbed my wrist and gained my attention. I looked at him confused because I was moments away from completing step 4, arriving at my destination. He pulled out his wallet from his pocket and handed me a sleek, black credit card. He held out the card to me, but I didn't move to take it. I was never the one to accept money from anyone. I even hated asking my parents for cash, and I most definitely hated being treated as someone's charity case. "This is to purchase whatever you want. Go crazy, there isn't a limit and my bank account is loaded." He shrugged as if it was no big deal. "That's supposed to impress me?" I faintly asked while warily looking at the piece of plastic. He laughed before replying, "If that puts me in your good books, then yes, I suppose. But honestly, don't worry about anything. Buy whatever and how much ever of anything you want," he said, shoving the card in my hand. What was I supposed to say? "Thank you. I can't accept this. It isn't my place, and it isn't my money. Plus, I'm not some charity case," I grumbled while trying to forcibly give him back the card. "No, Emery, that's not what I meant. Listen, everything that's mine is yours, okay? You're also my responsibility now, which makes this card is yours to spend. It's my job to take care of you, please just accept it. And how else were you planning to go shopping without money? He asked with a sparkle in his eye. I was speechless. I slipped the card into my pocket while giving him a grateful look. Knowing that this may be the last time I see him, I did the most irrational thing I could think of. No, I didn't jump his bones. I did, however, give him a hug. Without thinking twice, I leaned over the console in the Jeep and wrapped my arms around his neck. He was taken aback by my sudden contact, but as soon as he got his bearings, he wrapped his muscular arms around me in an endearing and comforting embrace. Thank you, I whispered into his ear, even though I should have been saying, see you later, kidnapper. I must admit it was a strange experience, but it definitely was an unforgettable one. Are you okay? Thane asked, giving me a calculating look as I pulled away. Yeah, I'm fine, I said, giving him the best smile I could manage. He looked at me warily but continued, I will see you in a few hours. Don't forget to call me when you're done. With a, see you later, I was out the vehicle and checking step 4 off my list. I knew I couldn't immediately execute step 5 of my plan or else Bailey would get suspicious, so I had to do the one thing that was practically Satan's spawn, shopping. I mentally cringed at the thought. I looked at the quiet street that was lined with little boutiques as Thane's Jeep pulled away from the curb and drove off. There wasn't a single car on the street, and it was a bit creepy but oddly peaceful. There wasn't much people either, but it was a strange town. As we walked into the first store, Bailey asked, so how was sleeping outside on the forest floor? I was embarrassed that she knew. Wait, how did you know? Did Thane tell you? I was suddenly regretting hugging him. She laughed at my sudden embarrassment. No, silly, however everyone in the pack knows. She gave me an easy smile to somehow make my mortification a little less harsh. What were you doing out there anyways? She asked to take my mind off my dilemma. Shooting her a guilty smile, I said, I may or may not have insulted Thane. He must not have taken that too nicely. He sure didn't, he even left me outside alone. What if I had died? I asked, exasperated. She narrowed her eyes at me. He didn't leave you alone. He had some of the guys patrolling around the house. They must have been a few feet behind you. Plus Thane sat by the window in the living room keeping an eye on you until you fell asleep. I wasn't even sure if he blinked. When you finally fell asleep, he rushed out to you and brought you inside. Her confession was news to me. Suddenly I felt guilty for what I was about to do. I knew I shouldn't be feeling this way, but our hearts played by its own rules. He really cares about you, you know. Bailey told me as she took in my silence. I'm sure he does, I said, being half truthful. Come on, let's get back shopping. I smiled and her face lit up. We possibly spent around 2 hours shopping. Bailey picked out most of the things for me while I bought simpler, comfortable clothing. I didn't spend much because 1, I was frugal, and 2, I didn't want to spend Thane's money too much if I was running away. I bought a couple dresses, but mostly jeans and sweaters. Who knew if my plans were going to fall through, right? After those 2 hours my feet were incredibly sore and I decided it was time for step 5, the last step in completing my task. I got Bailey to go sit in a cute little cafe and get something to eat as I told her I had to use the restroom. While she was at the counter checking out the donuts, I slipped Thane's card into one of my shopping bags as I walked away from Bailey's sight. I slipped out the door without Bailey or the cashier noticing. I was half walking and running down the street, towards the forested area, knowing I only had a few minutes until Bailey noticed I was missing and called Thane. I ducked in between 2 stores as I got out of sight from some of the curious glances of the people who was walking around the street. I breathed in the fresh air. I felt as if a weight was lifted from my shoulders and I can finally breathe again since the ritual. Step 5 intact. A huge grin adorned my face as I whispered to myself, mission accomplished, hook, line, and sinker. Not knowing which direction to go in, I just began to run. Anyway, far away from where I was, I figured would be far better. I finally felt liberated and free again as I exited the little alleyway and saw the forest not too far away. I finally felt liberated and free again as I exited the little alleyway and saw the forest not too far ahead. The moment was over faster than I thought possible. In a blink of an eye, my freedom was taken away just as fast as I had attained it. I felt a large, masculine and warm hand clutch onto my wrist, hauling me back into him. I could feel my heartbeat rapidly pulsing against my chest, both from running and for what wrath I was about to face. I struggled against his hold, but it was of no use. His grasp was like iron chains. He spun me around to face him, and I regret looking into his eyes. There in those brown eyes I grew accustomed to for the past few days, were now filled with a fiery and burning anger. Long gone were the soft eyes that held security, care, and passion. I quickly averted my gaze as I felt guilt bubbling inside me, threatening to spill out of my mouth with words of apology, words I dare not say. "So you're not going to say anything?" His voice was dangerously low, and I could feel the anger aimed at me, hitting me like a ton of bricks. Never being in such a situation with Thane, I didn't know what to do, so I zipped my mouth and threw the key in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. "Look at me, Emery." He raised his voice as his grip on my wrists tightened. "You're hurting me," I meekly mumbled. As soon as I said that, his grasp loosened incredibly, but he still held on to me, probably afraid that I would run again. His eyes flashed sorrow, but anger quickly consumed him again. "Look at me," he repeated as he lowered his voice. I disobediently looked anywhere but at him. "What? Cat caught your tongue? First you had the decency to run for the hills, and now you wouldn't even look at me?" He growled. "Stop it," I yelled, finally looking, more like glaring at him. "Stop acting like you're the victim here. Stop pretending like you were worried. And for the love of God, stop acting like you actually give a shit about me, as if you actually care if I leave or not." He growled at me. "You see, this is what I don't get. From day one I kept showing you that I do care, yet you keep shoving me away and acting like I'm hurting you. I'm protecting you, can't you see that?" "Protecting me? The only one you're protecting is yourself. You're afraid that if I got away from here that I would rat you out to the police and you wouldn't have the satisfaction of killing your latest prey. When would you get it through that beautiful head of yours that I do care about you? I would never dare hurt you, and I'm not your fucking kidnapper. You're so goddamn stubborn." He removed his hands off me as he brushed his hair back in frustration. If it wasn't for the current predicament, I probably would have been a pile of mush as he called me beautiful, and his now ruffled hair looked irresistible. Instead, I looked around to find that the surrounding area was eerily deserted. There was suddenly no one walking around in the street outside of the alleyway. I turned my gaze back at him, seeing him waiting for a response. "I'm the stubborn one? You're the one refusing to tell me why I'm here. If you aren't my kidnapper, then what the hell are you? Because you sure aren't my friend at the rate we're going at. You've kept me in the dark for too long. You've kept me away from everyone I love, my family, my friends. Not to mention that you haven't told me why you brought me here." I told I would explain everything when it's time. "And when is that? The next time those vile creatures come back for me? Those monsters in the woods? Or are you waiting to sacrifice me to this town's own little pagan ritual to the frickin' beast?" I said, disgusted. As I mentioned the beast, his face contorted into something between anger, sorrow, and guilt.